Good morning. I'm Councilmember Kenya McDuffie, at-large councilmember, chair of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. Today's Friday, February 7th, 2025, and we're convening this performance oversight in room 500 of the John A. Wilson Building and virtually via Zoom. The time is 9:31 a.m. and I'm calling to order this hearing. Today marks the committee's second performance oversight hearing, and we're hearing from the government witnesses representing the following agencies: Events DC, Public Service Commission, Department of Insurance, Securities and Banking. As a reminder, government witnesses will have 7 minutes to provide testimony. We'll receive written testimony from all three of the agencies that we're going to hear from today. The first entity that we're going to hear from is Events DC. Events DC is the official convention and sports authority for Washington, D.C. It operates the Walter E. Washington Convention Center, the historic Carnegie Library at Mount Vernon Square, the RFK Campus, Nationals Park, and the newly renamed Care First Arena, formerly known as the Entertainment Sports Arena. Events DC also promotes and produces some of the district's premier cultural events and activities and supports the district's hospitality and tourism industry with events like the district's Cherry Blossom Festival. Events DC's main source of revenue are conventions, sporting events, and dedicated hotel taxes. With that, we're going to call Events DC as a witness. First witness is President and CEO Angie Gates. As is the practice of this committee, before we begin, we're going to swear in all of our government witnesses who appear before us. So if you could, President Gates, I'm going to swear you and your team in. So if y'all can raise your right hands. Do you each swear or affirm under the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide before the Council of the District of Columbia and the Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. And good morning to each of you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us to come and testify today. Chairman McDuffie, if it's okay with you, I would love to provide a performance oversight video highlighting our accomplishments for fiscal year 2024.
You bet.
Events DC, the official convention and sports authority for the District of Columbia, has spent the last year keeping our venues booked, building the profile for the city, and increasing our international influence. To maintain a guaranteed pipeline of events, we sponsor dozens of events each month, creating and executing unique experiences of our own. Our partnerships and experiences span the globe, with international programming right here in the district, expanding the city's image from a political hub to a cultural center of global importance.
Our global reach continues to grow through events like Passport DC and hosting the 75th anniversary NATO Summit at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center.
We own, operate, and manage venues that host hundreds of events per year, attracting major sporting, entertainment, corporate, and association gatherings. These events welcome thousands of tourists, guests, and residents who stay in our hotels and dine in our city's Michelin-starred restaurants and neighborhood eateries. Events DC is at the helm of the district's tourism needs. We entertain and employ. We are the economic engine that drives all things cultural, creative, and enriching. Going global while staying local to impact and elevate everyone.
What we look for when we're looking for ports is, one, a good host partner.
That's what we do here in Washington, D.C.
Someone who's enthusiastic, good facilities, ideally a place of interest, and if you're really lucky, a nearby waterfront. And that's where, as far as I'm concerned, Washington's ticked the boxes.
At Events DC, technology powers everything we do. Our president and CEO, Angie M. Gates, made a decision to invest in technology and move Events DC forward. We're leading the way as the host for premier sponsorships, activations, and sporting events in the nation's capital.
Thank you, Chairman McDuffie. I hope you enjoyed the video. Good morning, Chairman McDuffie and members and staff of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. I am Angie Gates, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Washington Convention and Sports Authority, also known as Events DC. Thank you for inviting me to testify. Joining me today are Dr. Stephen Johnson, our Executive Vice President, Nicole Jackson, our General Counsel, and Veronica Taylor, Interim Chief Financial Officer. As the district's official convention and sports authority, our mission is to create unique experiences that result in jobs, economic impact, and lasting memories for residents, tourists, and guests. Our dedicated board of directors, led by board chair Leif Dormsjo, ensures the authority meets this mission every day. I want to take this opportunity to share my vision for the authority and key accomplishments over the past year. Our vision stands on 4 commitments. Our events entertain, employ, serve as an economic engine, and elevate everyone. Every day, I am focused on marketing the district. Our theme is Go Global, Stay Local. As you know, the authority is organized into 3 core lines of business: the Convention and Meetings Division, the Sports and Entertainment Division, and the Emmy Award-winning Creative Services Division. We have 11 venues in our portfolio, including the Convention Center, the RFK Campus Nationals Park, and as announced yesterday, our newly named Care First Arena. In FY24, we hosted 417 events at our venues, welcoming over 937,000 guests. Key highlights for FY24 include hosting 32 world leaders at the Convention Center for the historic NATO Summit, which generated an economic impact of $16.7 million for the district. I am proud of the fact that we have hosted more national security special events than any other convention center in the United States. In partnership with Destination DC, we secured the official tourism partnership of the U.S. Open, allowing us to highlight DC to nearly 30 million fans from around the world. In FY24, we launched the Events DC Academy. This program provides residents with hands-on training that prepares participants for successful careers in the district hospitality workforce. We also showcased Washington, D.C. as the ultimate destination for thousands of F1 racing fans from around the world through a series of events and activations. As you know, the Convention Center is a significant contributor to the economic vitality of downtown. In FY24, the center held 114 events with 678,000 guests, and we proudly received our LEED Platinum certification for excellence in sustainability. At the St. Elizabeth's campus, we hosted 206 events in FY24 with over 116,000 guests. Our commitment to the Congress Heights community is unwavering, and we will continue to activate the campus. Yesterday, I was pleased to announce an innovative partnership between Events DC and Care First. Through our partnership, Care First is making a significant financial commitment to local programming that strengthens the East of the River community. In FY24, key highlights of our Creative Services Division include Clipper Round the World Race, the Mubadala, City DC Open, international soccer events, and the Embassy Chef Challenge. In FY24, our operations resulted in an economic impact of over $500 million, which supports our local workforce, businesses, and so much more. During FY24, we received the highest number of grant applications in our community grants program history. We awarded $625,000 to 103 nonprofit organizations across all 8 wards. We are excited to expand our youth investment in FY25 thanks to you, Chairman McDuffie. We continue to engage our community with outreach and signature programming across the district, including the Gallery Place Chinatown corridor. In conclusion, Events DC remains committed to the district's success as a tourism and hospitality destination. At Events DC, we are world-class people delivering world-class events. I want to thank Mayor Bowser and the council for their steadfast support, and the Committee on Business and Economic Development, and you, Chairman McDuffie, for your strong leadership. This concludes my testimony. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. We really appreciate it. I want to note that we've been joined by Ward 7 council member and member of the Committee on Business and Economic Development, Councilmember Wendell Felder. I'm going to turn to you for a brief opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, and thank you, President Gates and members of Events DC for being here this morning. Oftentimes, my colleague and the chairman of this committee speaks about his vision for the nation's capital to be the sports capital of the United States. That vision would not be possible without the work that Events DC plays. You guys bring conventions, entertainment, and culture to the district. Often, both residents and visitors have the opportunity to experience DC in a unique way and an exciting way, and that would not be possible without your work. You also play a big part in our local economy, helping to drive revenue through sports and arts, and you're at the forefront of our most transformative project in the city right now, which is helping to reimagine the RFK campus. Your leadership and oversight in the demolition and shaping the future of that space is critical, not just only for the city as a whole, but especially for Ward 7 residents. As you can imagine, this work is deeply important to me and the residents I represent. Today, I look forward to asking questions and continuing to hear about the wonderful work that you all are doing. So I just want to thank you, and I give it back to the chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. Yesterday was a big day for the District of Columbia. It was a big day for people who care about sports in the District of Columbia. The announcement that you referenced in your opening testimony was great. I was there, Councilmember Felder was there, at-large Councilmember Christina Henderson was there, not to mention all the folks from the business community, youth, Excel Academy, band was phenomenal. So it was really a good day. Not getting as much attention, yet equally as important, as far as I'm concerned, was my introduction of a measure to really focus us even more so on our fantastic sports economy. But I introduced legislation yesterday to designate DC as the official sports capital of the United States. And in my statement, I mentioned that we're home to world-class sports teams, historic venues, and internationally recognized sporting events. That DC has long been a leader in the sports landscape. And for me, the designation really solidifies our status and unlocks new opportunities to expand our economic and cultural impacts through sports. I want to give you just one more opportunity to talk about the great day we had yesterday, what Care First commitment is to the District of Columbia in making that announcement to have naming rights in the arena, and what the impact means for the district as a whole, but in particular for Ward 8 residents.
Thank you so much, Chairman McDuffie, and thank you for that legislation that was introduced. We are the sports capital, and I'm looking forward here at Events DC for us to support that initiative. Care First partnership and yesterday's announcement was epic. It was a work in progress for over almost 2 years, but we're super excited about the commitment because it goes beyond just a name on a building. This was a naming rights partnership that was really focused on the community. Over $2 million will be spent over the course of 10 years, strictly in the Ward 8 community, focused on maternal health, workforce development, health and wellness collectively as a whole. So we're looking forward to working with the president and CEO, Brian Panick, and the entire team, and working really hand in hand with the community to really discuss the needs of the community, but to elevate health and wellness for the residents in that area.
I appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about youth grants and sports. Last year, around this time, we talked about your community grants program, and you stated that you received the most applications in history. Was it fiscal year 2023 or 2024?
In 2024.
2024, okay. Talk about what types of organizations have been applying and just what that impact has been. I also note, and you noted that I've been supportive of the work that you all have been doing, but we also increased funding in FY25 to do more programming around youth extracurricular activity grants and programming. So kind of a two-part question. I'd love for you just to talk generally about the types of applications you're beginning or just the impact that you've seen through the grants program. And then I'm going to follow up to hone in on, I think, what that additional funding might be used to help with.
Thank you so much for that question. And I want to start by saying thank you for that additional funding because the need is definitely there. We received more applicants than ever before in the entire history of the community grants program. It is geared towards nonprofit and it's across all 8 wards. It's focused primarily on sports, cultural arts, entertainment. But what we're finding that there's a need to scale these nonprofit organizations up with additional funding. So in FY25, the board, and I have to thank the board committee and grants chair, Ty Simpson, and the entire committee, grants team. From the board perspective, we raised our investment to $750,000 for FY24. But the $1 million that you're putting forth is going to make a significant difference. One thing that we did in FY24 from cycle 1 to cycle 2, we granted, 70 plus grants, but then for the second portion of that, we scaled it back to about 30 so we could scale and do further investments in these organizations. With your funding, this will allow us to have a broader reach, but allow us to drill down and allow these smaller organizations who are in desperate need and doing great work, not only bringing economic impact to the city, but educating our youth and preparing for the next generation. This opportunity with your funding will allow us to scale these organizations up. Just to give you an update with where we are with the funding, we are actually doing the processes and the requirements for that funding, and we're expecting that in late spring, early summer to announce that grant program.
Okay. Yeah, you anticipated my next question. I was going to ask you where you were in the process of getting some of that funding out. In particular, really, my hope is that the funding can be more catalytic, what it sounds like you all are attempting to do, because I'd love to see aid impact organizations across the District of Columbia doing great work, but I wanted to also include organizations perhaps that have not received recognition or even support in the past, right? Like there are a number of organizations doing fantastic work across the District of Columbia, and I know you all are familiar with a lot of them because you support them.
Yes.
But what are you all doing to identify organizations that may be doing similar great work, but perhaps don't have the resources or wherewithal to pursue those types of grants through Events DC?
So a couple of steps that we've taken, and we found that it was the need to do so, is informational sessions, also going out into the community. So we meet these organizations and we meet residents, but these nonprofits where they are. And so we've gone out into the community and conducted informational sessions. We've also assisted in the paperwork process. So it's an educational process as well to make sure that they're dotting their I's, crossing their T's, making sure, you know, the clean hands process is completed.
Okay.
We've done some bilingual sessions as well, because we want really everyone to be able to be elevated up. From a financial standpoint, not only do we highlight and talk about the grants that we offer at Events DC, we've brought in other organizations such as CAH and some of their grants, but everyone is super excited at Events DC to be prepared to launch the funding that you have provided.
Perfect, perfect. Staying on grants for a moment, there's been a lot of stuff in the news around federal grant programs, and we had an opportunity to have our public witnesses before the committee earlier this week. But I wanted to just toss a question to you. Actually, you know what? I've exceeded my round, so let me stop for a moment. I might ask my staff to actually use that beeper because I totally went over. So I'm going to turn to Councilman Felder, and I'll come back to the federal grants question in my next round.
I appreciate that, Mr. President. I wasn't gonna say nothing. Madam President, there's a couple questions that I had pertaining to RFK. You heard me talk about in my statement how we have a unique opportunity to reimagine that site, and I know Events DC is overseeing the demolition of that site, the stadium. So with that being said, I'll jump right in. Can you provide a detailed update on the demolition process of the RFK Stadium site, including the current timeline and expected completion date?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. That is the hot topic these days, the RFK Stadium site. That stadium demolition process has been in works for over a couple of years now. To give you a recent update, we received a letter of authorization from National Park Service to proceed with the structural demolition. Maybe back in November of 2022, we removed the last iconic orange seat from the stadium. So inside the stadium is totally empty at this point, but in order to proceed on the structural side of the demolition, we did everything from environmental testing, safety plans, and conducted that in place along with historic preservation plans that we all had to present to National Park Service. So we actually remobilized, and what I mean by remobilized, January 13th, where we're preparing to proceed with the structural removal. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything, so I'd like to turn it over to the General Counsel to see if there's anything she would like to add.
No, I think, as President Gates said, we're starting the structural demolition, which will start with some of the interior structural pieces first. We'll probably move to the exterior around the summer. The entire process will probably take through 2026 to complete in terms of timeline.
During my time in the community, I've spoken with neighbors who live in Kingman Park, Rosedale, River Terrace, Benton Road, and there were some questions pertaining to safety. My next question is, what specific steps are being taken to ensure the demolition is conducted safely and efficiently?
That's our number one priority, having a safety plan in place, and it goes beyond just the fencing. You know, it's amazing how many people have wanted to come in and capture pictures, you know, with where we are with the process, but safety first, that's a top priority. So we had to provide a safety plan. Separate and apart, it's not just the physical safety, it's the environmental safety aspects of it. So air quality control, we've done testing there. There were also, for example, PCBs that were found in some of the concrete. So we had to be very strategic in the way in which the concrete was removed from the site. We're also using the clean concrete for the backfilling. I want to engage my executive vice president to provide some of the additional steps that we've taken that go beyond safety for the site.
Thank you, President Gates. As President Gates
If-
stated,
Just mention your name for the record.
sure, thank you, Chairman. Dr. Stephen G. Johnson, Executive Vice President of Events DC. Just wanted to add to what President Gates stated in regards to all the measures that we have taken at Events DC pertaining to safety. We're being very open and transparent with the community. We engage various technology at the RFK site. We have cameras that's at the site to add that extra layer of security. It ties back to our master control system where we can monitor the safety at the site. Additionally, we provide some redundancy with camera technology by having a camera that's focused in real time as a webcast that ties into the Events DC site website, eventsdc.com. So it's in real time where the general public can monitor the actual demolition itself, just to be engaged in where we are from a transparency standpoint.
I appreciate that.
And I know, the live cam people have been focusing on are the pandas, but we have a live cam as well for the demolition.
I love it. You talk about the environment studies that you guys have done, which is a good segue to my next question. Could you provide those reports publicly? The studies that have been done specifically around the environment?
Yes, we can. And I can also provide an executive summary as well, but we can work with you directly and provide that information.
Thank you. And when you think about a stadium being demolished, obviously you think about noise, and we talked about this process, this demoing process is a little different. However, I've been asked questions in terms about noise, dust. So my question to you guys is, what measures are in place to mitigate noise, dust, and any other disruption to the surrounding communities?
So we've taken significant measures in that area. And one of the things I just want to start by highlighting, we're not taking steps without engaging the community. So we have the RFK quarterly meetings that we have. We also have a community engagement manager that is reachable at any given time. We've done rodent abatement and taken steps there, and I'll have Dr. Johnson and the general counsel speak to the additional steps. But we, from a noise perspective, we are very respectful that people live in that community. So the hours in which we're focused on the construction, we are very strategic in the time in which, like, the large machinery is coming into the campus. But also we've worked on a transportation plan as well, just to not disrupt what's happening in the community.
I love your proactiveness. I just want to ask this final question before this round concludes. When you said plan, it made me think about this question. What precautions are in place to protect the health of nearby residents from any hazardous materials that may be uncovered during the demolition? Has Events DC engaged with the DC Department of Health to establish a plan of action for protecting the health of nearby residents should something be uncovered?
So thank you for that question. Before we start, doing construction, drilling, any of that type of, we actually did multiple testing beforehand. So we were not in a position where we just went in and started the demolition process. This is part of why the letter of authorization was required through National Park Service. We did an entire environmental plan, and as things were discovered, like asbestos or contaminants in general, we've not only discovered that, but then took the necessary safety steps needed to how do we remove any form of contaminant from the campus and the property. And so that before we could even continue on the construction side of it, we had to present that plan to National Park Service. We had to present that plan to some additional health entities, and then we could proceed and move forward. And so when you think about, of course, it's not the movie set that maybe people are looking for an implosion, but when you talk about this taking, 18 to 22 months to come down, is for those variety of reasons, taking the necessary public safety steps. Dr. Johnson, is there anything you want to add?
Thank you, President Gates. As President Gates stated, we had to go through a rigorous process, particularly the National Park Service, as well as the Department of Interior. Also, we had to engage in providing a detailed plan to the Environmental Protection Agency prior to the actual pre-demolition. Once the plan was approved, we had to deal with several District of Columbia agencies, including but not limited to Department of Energy and the Environment, prior to receiving the raised permit for the demolition. As a part of the pre-demolition process, we conducted a soil test. We had to go through prior to the abatement for presumed to be asbestos, a removal of lead and other contaminants that was actually at the site, just to make sure that we actually removed it. As a part of that, we had to come up with a detailed plan that included, not limited to, a traffic analysis that were approved by DDOT in regards to making sure that those commercial vehicles remain on the main roadways as opposed to the neighborhood roads. So as a part of the transfer with regards to federal land, National Park Service has a detailed, rigorous process. We had to actually be approved for that back in November 2023, prior to actually remobilizing on January the 13th, 2025 to continue with the actual demolition plans. So we're very pleased with that. As also President Gates stated, we had an air quality test that's being conducted on rodent control. So we're making sure that we're constantly providing information in terms of what we're doing to the community, and we have the compliance that's in place to make sure that we're following all federal and district regulations pertaining to the project.
Thank you, President Gates, and thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. I'll just pick up where I left off. About a quarter of the district's gross funds budget comes from federal funding. And so I'm just asking all the agencies that appear before us for performance, whether they receive any federal funds or at risk of losing any federal funds. I don't think that's necessarily the case with you all, but I'm going to pose the question.
So no, we are not in lieu of the federal funding, with the exception there is a large tourism grant. That's the only area of the federal funding. The large tourism grant, which we'll be announcing soon, is really focused on DC being a destination-driven opportunity for 10,000 plus guests. So there was a grant that we worked with DMPED on. That amount was $3.5 million, and that will be issued to nonprofits. We're following all the federal regulations and guidelines for these large tourism grants, and that's the only federal funding that would tie
Is
to.
all the funding with Events DC, or is there some portion of it with?
No, the 3.5 is with Events DC, and we've already gone through the RFP where we've received the grant, not the RFP, but the grant applicants have already submitted their applications. We're actually at the point where we're getting ready to announce the recipients of that grant.
And this is 3.5 million that you already have?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, we already have it.
Thanks for that. I want to just ask about, I think we sent the committee some pre-hearing questions around sexual harassment, and we sent it to every agency under our purview, and we received responses from those agencies. For the benefit of the public, does the department have a primary and secondary sexual harassment officer?
Yes, we take any form of sexual harassment very serious. We have not only a show, but a secondary sexual harassment officer in place. Any employee that's experiencing or have any concerns regarding sexual harassment can report that to a manager, and then we go through the proper process. I'll turn it over to the general counsel to add any additional information.
Thank you, President Gates. As President Gates said, we do have the sexual harassment officer in a secondary as required. We do take these allegations very seriously when received. They go through a full investigative process if we receive any allegations. We do have mandatory sexual harassment training for all of our employees as well. So fortunately, we have not had that be a significant issue in our organization.
Have you all had any complaints over the last year?
I think in FY '24, I think in our responses, we said there were 2 or 3
Okay.
complaints.
Okay.
And those were all investigated fully and handled accordingly.
Okay, and so at this point, they've been included in terms of those investigations?
They've been concluded, yes.
All right. I want to turn back to some of the questions I had around youth sports. I know the convention center hosts certain youth sports events. I've been to some of them, such as the Capitol Hill Volleyball Classic next week. The Events DC has plenty of facilities that would make great hosts to events such as AAU youth basketball tournaments. Talk about some of the efforts that Events DC has made to increase its footprint in bringing youth sports tournaments and other activities that will bring youth both from the city, but also from outside the city to flood our city and partake in our facilities that you all have to host those types of activities in the district.
Going back to your legislation that was announced yesterday, we are indeed the sports capital. And being the sports capital goes beyond those professional sports. We're preparing for the next generation. And so the volleyball classic, as you mentioned, that's one of the largest volleyball tournaments. But then there are other actual local tournaments that are bringing in people from outside this region, like She's Got Game. That's one that I know you're familiar with. Made in Hoops is another opportunity. But some of the other tournaments that we are looking to bid on and go after is everything from the McDonald's tournament and then the Jordan tournament. That's something that we're extremely interested in. And we're going to compete and bid for those tournaments because what I always say is when you have a youth or a child that's playing in a tournament, not only is that an economic impact, but then it's the parents that's an economic impact. It's the grandparents, it's the aunts, it's the uncles. So, this will allow an entire family to come and travel to our city, stay in our hotels, eat at our restaurants. So that is a area that we've got to continue to grow and continue to focus on and elevate.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you mentioning that. As somebody who does have kids who play sports and somebody who travels around the country watching a kid play sports, I've traveled to places, no offense to those places, but there's not a whole lot to do outside of go to the sporting event. Conversely, as you pointed out, if players were to come to the District of Columbia to play a tournament at some facility here, it's an opportunity for a vacation for a family. It's an opportunity to partake in all that we have to offer in terms of monuments, the mall, museums, and everything else, like our world-class restaurants, stay in our hotels. And so I just really see that economic impact accruing to the District of Columbia in a way that it perhaps does not in some of these other places. So I like that you all are focused on that and are going to really continue to compete and perhaps even more focused on competing than you have in the past. So I appreciate that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the convention center. We are still not back to our fiscal year 2019 levels. And in fact, I think this was the first time since fiscal year 2021 that the total convention center events may have dropped a bit citywide. Talk about how you all are seeing those citywide events occur post-pandemic and just the types of activities that you all are doing to try to encourage more citywide events, conventions, conferences, et cetera.
So with the citywide, what's interesting, and I have to preference by saying, because I often talk to President Sean Townsend, who's like, Angie, I'm still trying to get funding and things back to pre-pandemic with the restaurants. But we have a due diligence to help President Townsend get there by bringing in not only the citywides, but what's called mini-wides and other events. But we are looking at pre-pandemic numbers from an economic impact perspective. I believe we did about 18 citywides in FY24, 17 citywides in FY23. What's interesting is we had a less attendance in 24 compared to like the prior year, or if you look back at FY19, there was a less attendance, but the overall economic impact was larger in FY24. And I think it goes back to what we just talked about. When these large conventions are coming into Washington, D.C., not only are the attendees coming, but typically they're bringing their families and they're extending this into like a leisure trip as well. We have seen a cost increase in some of the services, but there's also been an opportunity for us to offer an offset where maybe a cost increase with some of the services, with some of the vendors. We've been able to engage some of the cultural and community things that we have to offer from everything from a creative standpoint, but then we also work with our CBEs to get those numbers up from these big citywide events. One of the things that I do is work closely with Elliott Ferguson and Destination DC. They are the marketing arm for the districts and really go after these citywides. But I'll always say Events DC, we're a closer. We're going to come in and bring this added element to any citywide opportunity. One of the things that I do want to add from a business perspective is if the convention center is booked, we also don't want to lose a convention to another city. So at Events DC, we are strongly, along with Destination DC, building these relationships with surrounding hotels and utilizing their meeting space, utilizing their ballrooms, utilizing their space as an extension, if you will, for the convention center to try to maintain that business. I would love for the our interim chief financial officer, just to give a couple of highlights regarding the citywides and that economic impact.
And if you could just mention your name for the record.
Yes, good morning. My name is Veronica Taylor, and I'm the interim CFO at Events DC. As President Gates has already stated, we had 18 citywide events at the convention center. While much lower than what we've done in previous years, the economic impact resulted in over $100 million more than what we had in fiscal year 2019. Our economic impact for fiscal year 2019 was $375 million versus $476 million in FY24.
I appreciate that. I'm not going to quibble with the inflation numbers, but I want to peel back the layers on that. But my time has expired, so I'm going to turn to Councilmember Felder for another round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Picking up where we left off pertaining to rodents and pests surrounding the stadium, has there been reports of rodent infestation at the site? And if so, what mitigation strategies have been implemented?
Gosh, from citywides to rodents. So what are we doing over here at Events DC? So to answer your question, no, there hasn't been a rodent infestation. There has been rodent abatement and treatment that we have conducted, not only at the RFK Stadium site, but just we have 11 venues in our portfolio. And so as part of a health and safety measure, we make sure that we have our rodent plans in place, contaminant issues. We have those plans in place, but no infestation.
What communication channels such as public meetings, newsletters, social media outlets, et cetera, are being used to provide real-time updates during the demolition of the site?
So the quickest real-time update will be the live view camera that we have up. That's the quickest. One of the things, we have a communications department that sends out notices. Even when we got ready to remobilize January 13th, we sent that communication out. So the RFK quarterly meeting, that's not the only time where the residents in the community have an opportunity to chat with us about any concerns or updates. I personally have gone through the community and knocked on doors and engaged with the residents throughout the area. But we send email updates. We also have newsletters. We engage with the listservs as well to make sure. And I mean, it's old school phone calls too. You know, people never talk about phone calls anymore, but we have phone calls where we're responsive as well.
How can residents voice their concerns and provide feedback on this demo and process, or even in the future?
The best way is just to contact us directly.
Okay.
We can always utilize these community meetings as an opportunity. And Councilmember Felder, I want to extend my availability to join you, as well as Chairman McDuffie, if you all ever need me to join you at any of the ANC meetings. But I think it is important. Communication is key. And we want to remain open and transparent at all times.
You talk about the work of the demoing. Who is the primary contractor responsible for the demolition of RFK?
Smoot Construction. Smoot Construction went through the RFP process. They're the primary contractor, and Chairman McDuffie would appreciate this. Smoot Construction is a CBE, so they're the primary general contractor.
Which is a good segue to my next point. And the chairman of this committee and I have an invested effort or interest rather in supporting small and local businesses. What subcontracting opportunities exist for small and local businesses, particularly those in Ward 7? Yes.
Thank you for that question. So I'll answer it in two parts. From the demolition aspect, which has been, once again, the hot topic, Smoot Construction had to provide a subcontracting plan and work closely with DSLBD on that subcontracting plan. And so any opportunities there for the demolition specifically would go through Smoot Construction. But other opportunities, not only along Ward 7, but in general, we have the RFP process. Anything that's over $100,000, we also talk about that and highlight those opportunities in the Informer and in the Washington Post as well. I do want to point out with the RFK demolition, 50% of that demolition project is strictly for subcontracting purposes and for our CBEs. And that's very important because that's one of our largest investment projects. Dr. Johnson, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, thank you, President Gates. I want to emphasize that as a part of the DSLBD regulation, any contract $250,000 or more have to have a 35% subcontracting requirement. I want to emphasize that under President Gates' leadership, we made it a requirement with the CBE Smoot to have a 50% subcontracting. So that way it gave more opportunities for smaller local businesses to have an opportunity to participate. And we encourage not just the small businesses to participate, but more emphasis on Ward 7 and Ward 8 and the other regions. We also encourage those small and local businesses to look for opportunities with Smoot, which is often on their website, just to provide opportunities to be involved with the actual demolition process. As a part of the post-demolition, there's going to be regrading of the site and other opportunities that will emerge at a later date. So we encourage those small and local businesses to, again, to look for those opportunities.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. My final question, you talk about the work that you guys are focused on as it relates to giving opportunities to small and local businesses. If I'm an everyday Ward 7 resident and I wanted to join the wonderful team at Events DC, how can I go about doing it?
We want you to join them.
I have a good job. I have a good job right now. But
so just, CB this is such a great topic to touch on. I do want to commend the team and Dr. Johnson and the operations team, where most of the RFP opportunities, we actually when we look at the green book that comes out and, talk about what your required amount of spend is, our goal is always to go beyond it. So for example, in FY '24, our spend was roughly our goal was roughly 19.6 million. We exceeded that. We hit 105% by spending 20.6 or $20.8 million with CBEs. I learned a quick lesson in my former role at the Office of Cable Television, Film, Music, and Entertainment, which, I really love the team there as well. I worked with you, Chairman McDuffie, and really coming from the private sector, really understood the importance of the CBEs and investing in the CBEs. And so when I joined Events DC, it was imperative that we raised our CBE numbers up. And I do want to just share a couple of those numbers with you all, but we have a due diligence to help uplift those companies and those businesses. And we also have a due diligence if they're not a CBE, but on the brink of being a CBE, that we do some form of connection with DSLBD. I know they make the final decision there, but we work hand in hand to help elevate them that's on the brink of becoming a CBE. Do you have a couple of our CBE highlights?
Yes, thank you, President Gates. Yes, so President Gates meet weekly. We meet weekly with our Office of Contract and Procurement, just to make sure that we're not only meeting the CBE goals, but we're exceeding it and finding opportunities, not just in those traditional roles in which CBEs have opportunities, office supplies, et cetera, but those non-traditional roles such as technology and other areas of large procurements. I want to also, Councilman Phil, to go back to your initial question regarding jobs and opportunities. We encourage residents of the district, and in your case specifically Ward 7, to go to our website, eventsdc.com, because we have several opening positions and we are in the process of recruiting. Under President Gates' leadership, we're looking for individuals to have a fair seat at the table. We're making efforts in terms of for returning citizens, those legacy, or some people refer to them as senior citizens. So we're looking for everyone. We have a program in terms of Strive under President Gates' leadership that we just launched in regards to providing returning citizens opportunities as a pipeline. We recently hired some individuals to be in our meeting services division, our food and beverage division, working with Airmark. So we're providing opportunities to give individuals an opportunity and a second chance to be a part of what we're doing. I also wanted to emphasize that we have a leadership academy. So we're training with the youth in terms of the hospitality programs and placing them with our various service partners in terms of audiovisual, food and beverage, and the other areas of our operation. So we're very proud of what we're doing, and we're making efforts to launch new initiatives to give everyone an opportunity. And last, and wrapping up, I wanted to emphasize that under President Gates' leadership, that we have outlined money and put it in our contracts that we just negotiated with our collective bargaining agreement with our operating engineers, Local 99, which we started an apprenticeship program. So therefore, individuals who are not going the traditional route of a college education have an opportunity to get involved via the skilled trades, because they can make a great living in the skilled trades. So we have one of the most technologically advanced power plants in the region. So that's something that we're doing and working with the Teamsters, with our Carpenters Union and other areas in terms of skilled trade to provide opportunities for those non-traditional areas in terms of training and development.
Dr. Johnson, President Gates, that concludes my questions. I commend the team at Events DC, and Mr. Chairman, the floor is yours.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Councilmember Felder. Just reminding me of something that you mentioned, all the opportunities for youth, leadership program. I'm sure I've talked with LaToya Foster, who's doing a fantastic job, the Office of Cable Television. But when I was growing up, way back when my jump shot was a lot better in high school, the games used to be recorded. Our basketball games when I attended Jackson Reed High School, and there were students who did the interviews, post and pregame. And, if you had a good game, like I frequently did, you got interviewed, right? And you could also go see yourself later on DC cable. That that seemed to have gone away, and I'd be interested in maybe, just following up with LaToya Foster, but also maybe there's a role for Events DC, given the world-class events that you all have and y'all's engagement around youth, leadership program, apprenticeships, and things like that. There are a lot of young folks who are now sort of amateur videographers or photographers who are recording games, using social media as a tool. And there are a lot of people who are paying adults to do this kind of work, where I know kids are already in those spaces. So I'm just throwing it out there.
No, don't, I'm like, I play baseball, I'm gonna catch it. So, no, I'm a creative at heart. So you're 100% accurate. I would love, we actually have an MOU with OCTF&Me. I love working with OCTF&Me. And so I love the team there. But you hit the nail, right on the head. We can work collectively together and not only capture the moment of being in the game, but there's so many opportunities. And going back to the funding that you're providing on the youth side, I think is crucial if we have that media component to it, because it's not always what happens, on the field or on the court. It's all the audiovisual opportunities that's behind the scenes that are true. I mean, my degree is in sports management.
Well,
and
you literally just took the words out of my, I was going to say sports management too, right? Because there's a lot of folks who are not athletic, but are involved in the sort of helping the games function in terms of sports management.
Yes.
So there's so many roles in sports that young folks can be involved with. Some are already involved with, but don't necessarily see it as a career path. And when in fact, it could be a career
It
path
is
if exposed to it.
Absolutely legal, like, sports attorneys, all of that comes into play. One of the other things, and as you were talking through it, it jogged my memory. I'm like, this is a must. We have our creative services division led by Bruce Walker. It's a day in the life of some of these athletes, especially these youth athletes, just having their story told. Like, you would be amazed at some of the things that they have to go through even before they get to the locker room, and what happens on the field, and, what they may have to deal with. They're not, they're adults.
I think I'm intimately involved with what they have to deal with. I got one who's dealing with it. But it is a whole lot. It's a lot. And so, I don't want to take too much time with that, but I appreciate your background and understanding why I wanted to lift that up. But I also want to lift up, trying to find out what those archives are, those old basketball games.
Let's see if we can find a video of you,
Let's find
Chairman.
the videos. Where
See
these
if we can
videos
find
at?
one of your videos, one of them jump shots.
Yeah. So let me talk about some events. Picking up where I left off. You mentioned, we talked about Care First Arena.
Yes.
And I know there are a lot of events that occur there. Capital City Go-Go. I've been to any number of mixed games. In fact, saw a championship played there. There's about 4,200 seats at that venue. But there are also other places in the District of Columbia that host concerts. Because I keep hearing about concerts. We know that the Capital One Arena is one of those places. But large events, in some instances, unfortunately, are skipping DC and going to places like Baltimore during the winter. When our Wizards and our Caps are actually playing, you can't host as many events, if any, during that season. And so I'm wondering if you've considered how many more concerts the district could host if we had another venue similarly sized to like a Capital One, a 20,000 seat venue.
Oh, thank you for that question. To your point, and interesting enough, one of my former roles was with Live Nation, which is the #1 entertainment company, and we never want these concerts to, skip over DC and head to Baltimore or Richmond, but they indeed happen. So I do think it is important and something that we can definitely consider, because what's having to be considered now is doing like, if you take a venue like the Anthem and doing multiple events, a night, like if you do a 3-night, event there, that kind of gets you to somewhat of a capacity, but the talent doesn't have the 3 nights to give. Like, it's not necessarily Vegas where people are trying to do a residency. Right. So I think that's something that we should look at, and we can do something in some studies here at Events DC to help with that. In addition, having a seat at the table with some of these key promoters. It's the Black Promoters Collective, Live Nation, several other entities. But it is important that we don't get skipped over. There are a couple of artists that they don't want to be in Maryland, Virginia. When they say we're live from DC,
Yeah.
they want to be live from DC. And so that is crucial. I know when I worked with a few artists in the past, they're like, that's not DC.
Right.
We want to be in DC.
Well, I appreciate that for sure. Because you mentioned the anthem. I think the anthem has about what, 10,000 seats maybe?
Standing, I think it's
Okay,
about
okay.
8.
But I'm just wondering about how many additional conferences or big gatherings could the city host if we had another venue available when the convention center is occupied or when the anthem is occupied or when we're in the winter months when the Caps and the Mystics are playing and we're cheering them on as they get better and better.
And as you mentioned, being the sports capital, like that's going to give more opportunity for events to come here. And so there is room for growth. There is room for opportunity, not only in entertainment, but on the sports side. So that's something that we definitely need to consider because we don't want to be in a situation where we're losing any business here in Washington, D.C. For example, we have World Pride coming up in June. The city is going to be filled to capacity. And that's been the key discussion, where are all the venues we can host based on the different levels of capacity. So we'll gladly work with your office regarding that initiative.
I appreciate that because I know there's about 40,000, maybe 41,000 seats at Nat Stadium. So I'm thinking about the different venues we have, the venues that we have that have a cover versus the venues that are open to the elements, and how, as a world-class sports capital, we're thinking across the opportunities or perhaps missed opportunities without certain investments that we want to make.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to mention, just to elaborate on what President Gates stated, Events DC is involved with the various venues in the area. Specifically, I want to highlight Audi Field. We've been under President Gates' leadership, working with the leadership of Audi Field as a part of exploratory assessment to look at possible a covering of that area. So that is, I just wanted to highlight that that's something that is currently underway. And we in those discussions, just as exploratory, and also looking at other markets to determine what are they doing in other markets such as Chicago and LA and the other major markets. And then also various discussions under President Gates' leadership. She mentioned Live Nation, but also AEG Live and the other large concert promoters. Also, we're looking at our festival grounds. We've been in discussions with Glow, but expanding our footprint in terms of the number of festivals. We have several festivals on our
I
RFK.
don't think I heard it in my house
ground.
last year, so that's great.
Right, that's a good thing. Yeah, well, we redirected that audio to go toward different areas to make sure we minimize the noise. We heard that from the neighbor specific Ward 7, and we paid attention to that and made the proper adjustments with the noise control. But I wanted to just mention that under President Gates' leadership, that we are looking at not only the actual stadiums and venues, but also our festival grounds and other areas. And we've also have sent some of our leadership team to the Concert Industry Consortium to look at block bookings and ways in which we could collaborate with other destinations in terms of the routings to increase the number of concerts and entertainment events here in the district.
I'm glad to hear that you all are, as usual, you're on it and you're looking at these things.
And Chairman McDuffie, I recently had meetings with the management at National Park. I do, in case you missed it. We did an announcement. We just did an announcement. Billy Joel and Sting are coming. Like that was hot off the presses last week. So when you're talking about Nats Park, and then they do pre-concerts and post-concerts at Nats Park, so that their portfolio is diversifying as well.
Okay, awesome. That's great news. Along the lines of National Park, I was. I don't remember where I was. It's all a blur. But I was somewhere with, it was at I think the Southwest bid, maybe. No, Capitol Riverfront bid is where I was last week, where Greg McCarthy and talked about some plans that they have and they unveiled beautiful renderings around Nats Ballpark, trying to make it more of a year-round destination. One of the ways they envision doing that is through the installation of more retail kiosks along First Street. I know Events DC had entered an agreement with them to create more retail along the street last year. I also know that you all have been doing a number of things around the convention center with the retail as well, but I wanted to just get some updates on how that's going with Nats Park and some of the retail around that area.
Thank you for that question. So that's my other time aspect of the job, being heavily engaged with Nationals Park and their team. Those renderings looked, great for us. And going back, and I love referring to the legislation sports capital, it's building out these venues and these areas to be a destination-driven opportunity. Destinations even across all 8 wards for our residents to come and engage, but being a destination-driven opportunity with these venues. So the retail space, for example, so we serve as the landlord for the stadium. And so we've spent a lot of time discussing improvements there, how to make sure that it's a competitive facility. One of the things that we worked on and accomplished, and it took a while, but we got there, was on First Street. X Golf opened as one of the largest retail space in that particular area. We're still working closely with Nats Park, especially on their capital plan and the improvements there. But we actually receive each on an annual basis. We get $1.5 million from the city for any capital plan improvements. The remaining aspect comes out of our budget. We're also looking at renegotiating the lease with Nats Park as well. So I want to make sure that you're aware of that. And one of our asks, of course, is the extension of their commitment here and in their term of being here in Washington, D.C. But there are opportunities that building up that Capitol Riverfront area along with the support of Audi Field that could really be an enhancement.
No, I'm glad you bring that up. I mean, again, you are preempting some of my questions to share this stand, so I appreciate you being proactive. But it was just thinking about the history of Nats Park and some of the things that have come up around negotiations, maintenance, renovations, and things like that. I know that was top of mind for you when you took this role, and I appreciate you being a bit more proactive around some of those negotiations. So I'm glad to hear that you all are engaging around the Capitol Riverfront, the revitalization of Nats Park, and already talking about perhaps that lease and what an extension might look like.
Right.
We love what's happening down there in that part of the city. I'm old enough to remember what was there before the stadium was there, and there weren't a whole lot of reasons to go down there. And I'm not sure that my parents wanted me in that area before that stadium got there. So it's great to know that you are having those conversations. I'm sure the Nats appreciate it, as do I as chairman of the committee with oversight of Events DC. I was going to ask about RFK, but I think my Ward 7 colleague did a really
He
good
took
job
all the
of
RFK questions.
taking care of the RFK questions. He also took care of the CBE questions too, which is great. You all mentioned World Pride a little earlier in one of your responses, but I want to just take an opportunity to highlight that because I think it's going to be one of the highest, if not the highest attended events in the district this year. You stated that events are taking place across Events DC's venues. What are the types of events that you're hosting? Or let me just ask you a little bit more to maybe flesh out how you all are thinking about World Pride, your role, and what, if any, sister agencies you might be working with to coordinate things.
Thank you so much for that question. And that was probably about 2 years ago or early in 22 when the bid was conducted and we bidded on World Pride and won the bid. I had an opportunity to see firsthand. So before seeing, and it's every 2 years, it was in Australia in 23. And I remember before going there, it wasn't a doubt in my mind that we could be prepared and over deliver on what was necessary. And it was such a wow factor when I looked at all the individuals and guests that had come from around the world. I was at one of the key highlighted concerts and knew that we had some work to do. So Capital Pride Alliance is the key leader and working on the deliverables for World Pride. We also have a member of our team working closely with the city, and there are meetings conducted almost weekly regarding World Pride. A lot of the bids across the wards have their individual events that are being highlighted, and it could be anything from a dance party to a masquerade ball that are going to be taking place. There's also a human rights summit and conference that's going to be taking place during that period of time as well. So I do agree with you. I think we're going to see one of the largest influx of guests and tourists filling our hotels, engaging our restaurants than we have either ever seen or seen in an extremely, extremely long time. And not only did we focus on the safety, measures with bringing in such a large group, but making sure that, the city is painted pride, with, all the representation and the inclusiveness, it being inclusive and equitable across the city collectively as a whole. But we have several days that are being outlined and making sure that things are happening across all 8 wards. This is a great opportunity to engage downtown as well. So, it's a lot in store. It's a lot in store.
Glad to hear it. I don't have any additional questions at this time. Is there anything else that you all would like to add to the record before we move to our next agency?
I just want to thank you again for your support. I want to thank you for the additional grant opportunity that we're receiving. Just going back to that Care First Arena event yesterday, I was amazed at all the youth and the young people that were surrounded, and they're up next. Right. They're up next, and we have a due diligence to make sure that we invest in our youth. Once again, I want to thank the mayor and the council collectively as a whole. I want to say a special thank you to the OCTFME team, who I know are running these meetings, and the Events DC team. I would not be able to sit in this seat, accomplish the things that get accomplished without the support of the team. I could not do this without them. And I want to say a heartfelt thank you to the entire Events DC team. And we're going to keep winning.
Okay, let's keep winning. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Gates. I'm going to turn next to the Public Service Commission, or the PSC. The mission of the Public Service Commission is to serve the public interest by ensuring that public utilities provide safe, reliable, and quality services at reasonable rates for the district's residential, business, and government customers. The commission prioritizes public safety, customer satisfaction, and economic development in its regulatory work. It promotes public safety by overseeing natural gas pipeline safety and other utility safety, and it investigates outages and incidents involving the regulated utilities. It also works to assist with consumers and their issues they may have with gas, electric, and telecom services. The commission also oversees the utilities' economic development in the district through regulation of energy projects, rates, distribution, network of services. With that, I'm going to call up our Public Service Commissioner Chairman, Emil Thompson. Anybody else from the commission who plans to testify? And I'm going to ask, before you get started, that you raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Council of the District of Columbia and the Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us here at the Wilson Building. You can begin your testimony whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. And good morning to you as well, Chairman McDuffie and other members of the committee who may be present virtually. I'm Emil C. Thompson, Chairman of the DC Public Service Commission. Thank you for allowing me to testify here today. It is my honor to share with you the work that the PSC has done in the past year to advance our mission to ensure that the utilities provide safe, affordable, and reliable services to District of Columbia residents, while also advancing the district's clean energy commitments. So starting there, I want to talk first a little bit about the energy transition, formal case number 1167. As the committee is aware, in November of 2020, the commission initiated formal case number 1167 to create a process by which the commission would evaluate the utilities plans for meeting the district's climate commitments. Since the initiation of that case and the initial plans were filed, there have been several laws and regulations that have been passed that require the utilities to update those plans. So in December of 2024, the commission issued an order directing utilities to submit their updated 15-year plans detailing how new federal and district legislation affects the utilities and their strategies for complying with the district's climate mandates. We also have the Pilot Projects Governance Board. The commission has demonstrated leadership through the Pilot Project Governance Board, which is responsible for reviewing and recommending innovative pilot projects to modernize the energy delivery system. Currently, there are 3 pilot projects underway, which the commission is monitoring: the community heat pump pilot, the solar aggregation and advanced inverter pilot, and the transactive neighborhood renewable microgrid pilot. I'm happy to report that considerable progress is being made on all 3 of those projects. The community heat pump pilot has awarded 2 contracts, one for the Berry Farm redevelopment for $2.5 million, and construction is underway in that project. And the second is for the Meadow Green Court Apartments for $2.5 million, and that project is in the design phase. For the solar aggregation and advanced inverter pilot, an award was made in late November. And additionally, an RFP was issued on December 17, 2024 for the microgrid pilot. The 4th and final RFP, a virtual power plant pilot, will be issued in February of 2025. The commission also continues to take steps to ensure that the district can meet its goal of 100% renewable energy by 2032, and that 15% of the electricity is generated within the district by 2041. The PSC is excelling in its administration of the RPS program, which ensures that mandates established by the local Solar Expansion Amendment Act of 2022 are met. In calendar year 2024, the commission certified 2,852 new solar facilities within the district for participation in the RPS program, including 57 new community renewable energy facilities. The total RPS certified solar capacity of 308 megawatts exceeded the district's 2024 RPS solar carve-out estimated target of 255 megawatts, or 3.65% of the total estimated 2024 district retail electricity sales. I'm happy to report that 2024 was the 4th consecutive year in which the district achieved its district solar carve-out target objective. And gas pipe replacement. In December 2022, Washington Gas filed its Project Pipes 3 application. On June 12, 2024, the commission rejected the Project Pipes 3 application and directed WGL to submit a restructured pipes plan that ensures the safe and reliable operation of the natural gas infrastructure system to meet the energy needs of all district consumers in the district, as well as align with the district's climate goals. In the same order, the commission opened up FC 1179 to investigate Washington Gas District Safe Plan, which was then filed on September 27, 2024. The commission is currently evaluating that program and determining whether or not to approve that program. Turning to affordability, there have been several movements over the past year in this field. On November 26, 2024, the commission approved a modified multi-year rate plan for PEPCO. This decision establishes electric distribution rates for calendar years 2025 and 2026, while also ensuring transparency, accountability, and consumer protections. Specifically, the increased oversight mandates that PEPCO file quarterly rate of return earnings reports and reconciliation reports detailing expenditures. PEPCO will also undergo a 2-phase independent management audit to validate the accuracy and completeness of the company's MRP performance. It is important to note that while the rates do increase by a total of $123.4 million over 2 years, that's 35% less than what PEPCO initially requested. Additionally, even though there are these rate increases, low-income customers who are eligible for the RAD, Residential Aid Discount Program, will remain unaffected, ensuring that those customers continue to receive free electric distribution service. Finally, a key component of that case also initiated an integrated distribution selling system planning process for the electrical grid, increasing transparency. We also have a pending Washington Gas rate case before us, and we are currently overseeing Washington Gas's application, which was filed on August 5th, August 2024, to increase rates and charges for the natural gas services in the district. Washington Gas seeks to increase its total revenue by approximately $257.2 million, resulting in an effective net increase of $33.9 million, or roughly a 12% increase over current rates. If approved, the proposed rate increase would result in an average monthly increase of about $15.33 per residential bill. To help combat rising costs, the Commission stays focused on its utility discount programs. The PSC oversees a variety of assistance and discount programs that help reduce utility costs for low-income residents. This includes PEPCO's Residential Aid Discount Program, WGL's Residential Essential Services Program, and Verizon's Landline Economy 2 program. Additionally, through the Utility Discount Program Education Working Group, which includes representatives from the Commission, the Department of Energy and Environment, DOEE, and the Office of the People's Counsel, OPC, and the utilities themselves, we work to vigorously educate residents about the district's various utility discount programs and get them signed up. These efforts are paying off, as in the most recent work group annual report for FY24, the number of total utility discount program applications received was 11,283, of which 3,456 were new applications. They hadn't applied in FY23. Looking ahead, the Commission will continue to examine the UDP's role and how we can get further enrollment in these programs and increase awareness and participation. Perhaps what's most concerning is the rising cost of electricity throughout the region. As you're well aware, we do not generate our electricity here in DC. We get it from the larger grid, PJM. And these are costs that are not regulated by the Public Service Commission, but are simply pass-through costs. In June of 2024, PJM held its capacity auction, and the results of those prices resulted in a tenfold increase. That increase, when translated to a customer's bill, an average residential bill is more than $10 a month. These higher capacity prices are driven by a number of factors, such as power plant retirements, increased load, and a lack of new generation. As a result of the auction, the PSC, along with fellow states in the region, have advocated for a number of reforms to ensure that this pricing reflects true market conditions. It should be noted that these capacity prices are expected to continue to rise for the foreseeable future. So there will be additional increases that are outside of the Commission's control. One thing the Commission has done locally is we established a PJM Capacity Auction Task Force on December 9th, 2024. This task force will analyze the financial impact of the auction, educate consumers on new charges, and learn what changes PEPCO will make to its business strategy in light of the capacity auctions. Task force members include PEPCO, OPC, the DC Assistant City Administrator, AOBA, DOEE, the Office of the Attorney General, PJM, and Commission staff as well. The first meeting took place on January 3rd, 2025, and the next meeting is scheduled for February 14th, Valentine's Day of this year. In the same vein of talking about outreach with the community, the Commission has worked hard to ensure transparency and awareness of the Commission's work. Our Office of Consumer Services has conducted approximately 50 outreach events in 2024. So doing simple math, that's almost one every week, and we do those across all 8 wards. I am proud of our demonstrated commitment to visiting communities to provide consumer education and information regarding utility scams, our utility discount programs, energy efficiency, and the Commission's consumer complaint mediation and resolution programs. In addition, the PSC takes great pride in providing a platform to exchange ideas and best practices to accelerate the transition towards a clean energy future. On October 30th, 2024, the Commission hosted its 3rd Clean Energy Summit, a one-day event that focused and brought together industry experts, policymakers, small business owners, community leaders to discuss the latest advancements, challenges, and opportunities in the clean energy sector. The 2024 theme was Powering Tomorrow, Clean Energy for a Sustainable and Equitable Future, underscoring our commitment to collaboration and innovation. Key sessions included equity in an energy transition, harnessing modern energy systems, green jobs and green banks, and the future of clean energy in the district. I'm happy to report that by all accounts, the summit was a resounding success, which is a testament to the team's hard work and dedication. Finally, the Commission held its third supplier diversity hearing on July 25th, 2024. During the proceeding, the Commission evaluated the utilities' commitment to their respective voluntary MOUs, which encourage them to award at least 25% of their total procurement spend to minority, women, service-disabled veterans, and LGBT-owned community businesses. 2 of the 3 utilities met the required amount of the previous year. PEPCO was at 42.2% and WGL was at 32.7%. While Verizon reported a decreased percentage for 2023, typically they have met their goal. They attributed to this to an increase in overall spend and a loss of their top diverse supplier, which was acquired. At the supplier diversity hearing, Verizon laid out concrete steps they are taking to meet the 25% goal in the future. The Commission will continue its evaluation of utilities' use of diverse suppliers to determine how outcomes can be more impactful for residents. As we embark on the journey into 2025, we must emphasize our dedication to our core values of our office: respect, collaboration, service, adaptability, and equity. As a chairman, I am devoted to modeling these values, which serve as a foundation for our mission and guide our actions in serving our district residents. In closing, I want to thank my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Beverly and Commissioner Trabue, our staff, for all of their hard work. I'm extraordinarily proud of our team's commitment to the core mission of the PSC, and I thank the committee for its continued support. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have today. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. I'm going to turn to Ward 7 Councilmember, member of the committee, Wendell Felder, for any opening remarks.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Thank you, Chairman Thompson, for joining us today. Thank you for being here as we conduct this oversight hearing on the Public Service Commission. The work of the PSC is critical in ensuring that DC residents have access to reliable, affordable, and fair utility services. One of the most pressing concerns for my constituents and for residents across the district is the rising cost of utilities. From electricity and gas to water, these are necessities, and it is our responsibility to ensure that people are not being overburdened by the excessive rates. The Public Service Commission plays a key role in overseeing how these rates are set and making sure utility companies like PEPCO, Washington Gas, and Verizon are operating fairly and transparently. Today, I look forward to discussing how the PSC is working to protect consumers, how often they engage with utility companies, and what steps are being taken to prevent price gouging. It is essential that we have a strong oversight and accountability in this space and to make sure that DC residents, especially those in communities like Ward 7, are not being taken advantage of. With that, I would either lead into my questions, or I would defer back to the chairman.
I'm going to start with some questions, then I'll defer back to you after.
Yes, sir.
We could do a 7-minute round if we could. Daniel, thank you. I want to start my questions, as I typically do, with some of the questions that we got from our public witnesses who testified before the committee earlier this week. We had several witnesses express concern with the District Safe Plan, formerly known as Project Pipes. Generally, these witnesses questioned whether Washington Gas investment as proposed justifies the rate increase expected on residential and commercial customers, and whether the proposal is consistent with the district's goals to move away from non-renewable energy resources and towards electrification. But I want to give you an opportunity to respond to those concerns. I think one witness recognized that you were not present in the hearing during the public testimony. I think I mentioned to that witness that usually you have people who are observing online and following these things pretty closely, as I imagine you were, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to respond to that. And then I'll get into some more specifics about some of the things that witnesses raised. But as a general question to you, just any response you might have.
Yes, and thank you. I certainly do have people who watch, and I watched the hearing later that day, so I'm aware of the questions and the testimony from the parties who came, and I thank them for their advocacy. First, let me start at a very high level about the gas system in the district. The gas system in the district is a very old system. You have some cast iron and bare steel pipes that are in the ground that are approaching 90 years old. And with pipe that old in the ground, subject to the elements for that long of a period, they have a high risk of failure. And so when we start talking about pipe replacement, the concern is in safety. And I believe it was in either 2015 or 2013 or 2015, there was a national call to action for jurisdictions to address their aging pipe systems. And primarily where you saw this was up and down the East Coast, because those are the older cities in the nation. And so a number of jurisdictions, Maryland, New York, Boston, all have accelerated pipe replacement programs. All of these, coincidentally, are jurisdictions that also have very aggressive climate policies. I would note that each one of these cities has continued to maintain their pipe replacement program. I think what's key and what's paramount before us as a commission to determine and to decide is the right level of investment to ensure a safe, affordable, and reliable system so that we don't have gas explosions, so we don't have leaking GHG emissions from those pipes, while also balancing the district's march toward its clean energy goals. And so that's what's before us now. In my testimony, I talked about how the commission rejected Washington Gas's initial Project Pipes 3 application and then came back and said, we want a new program. Well, that new program is asking for Washington Gas to have a strategic, targeted program focusing on the riskiest pipe. And so that's we are, that's currently before us, and that's the job of the commission.
Thank you for that. This sort of blends in, but I still want an opportunity to get the question out, just really articulating the concern raised by Barbara Briggs. Even if there's some overlap in your response, I want to put the question out, give you the opportunity to respond to it. Representing the Friends meeting of Washington Committee on Peace and Social Concerns, Barbara Briggs provided a study published from the Beyond Gas Coalition that concluded that 77% of the homes tested by the coalition in the district had nitrogen oxide levels of 181 parts per billion, nearly twice the EPA's health protective standard. Just have you had the opportunity to review that particular study and how, if at all, is the commission addressing the purported rising levels that she mentioned in her testimony?
Yes. If I'm correct, that study was based off of, they did a study in which they used gas stoves and they would turn the gas stoves on and then see what was remaining in the homes. I think it's certainly a concern. I hate to punt on certain issues, but that's a stove or a building code issue, right? Is there proper ventilation in the home? Unfortunately, we have some fans aren't exhaust fans. They're circulating in the home. And so it might not provide the necessary air refresh that's necessary. But quite frankly, the commission does not regulate gas stoves. And to me, that's more of a licensing or consumer protection issue as opposed or home regulation issue as opposed to a perhaps a regulation that's under the commission's control.
Thank you for that. Ann DeBise testified as well on Wednesday and expressed concern that the commission has not taken meaningful steps to collaborate with DOEE, the Regulatory Assistance Project, or the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. Can you speak briefly to any relationship with those organizations and just whether you or anybody associated with the commission has had the opportunity to work with DOEE to address those climate concerns?
Yes. So I'll go in reverse. the Lawrence National Laboratory. I believe we actually had them in to talk to us about distribution system planning, and that provided some of the basis for the integrated distribution system planning framework that we, notice of inquiry that we put out earlier this year. With respect to the regulatory assistance project, I have had a lot of contact with them. I know other commissioners' staff have worked with them. They are certainly a trusted entity in this ecosystem. One of my closest commissioner friends previously worked at the regulatory assistance project, so certainly there's a lot of communication there. In regards to our partnership with DOE, I talked earlier about the work that we do with utility discount programs. They are frequent partners in almost all of our work groups. They are very active in our proceedings, and so I would push back on that. I think we work a lot with them, always listening. I've spoken several times and always engaged with not only the director of DOE, but I've talked a few times with the head of the Energy Administration. So I would push back on that.
And then just really quickly before I turn to Councilmember Felder for a round, one other public witness I want to make sure I give you the opportunity to respond to this, but also to lift up the concerns raised by Karen Gladding, representing Third Act. She testified that the commission failed to hold any public forums to elicit feedback from customers. You noted in your pre-hearing responses that the commission hosted approximately 50 outreach events and has generally held community hearings, but I want to give you an opportunity to respond to the concern that she raised, and I think she was raising it in the context of some of the concerns around district safe plan.
Okay.
But how do you respond to those criticisms about transparency and really engagement with consumers and stakeholders?
Yes. So I mentioned earlier the 50 or so outreach events that the Office of Consumer Services has, but with the most recent rate case and what we do with all our rate cases, we have hearings in the community. We typically have, I believe, 2 hearings in the wards. Usually we try and target wards that aren't as accessible. So we'll either do 7 or 8 and 4 and 5. But we also have hearings at the commission that are hybrid so that people can call in if they're unable to come downtown. And so we certainly provide a venue. I can tell you that we have lots of engagement on our docket from the community expressing their points of view on various plans, not only on our docket, but in my emails. And so, and on top of that, I would also note that my door is always open. I'm frequently talking with community members about their concerns and what problems that they have with various programs.
Thank you. I got one more I want to raise, but I'm well over my time, so I'm going to turn to Councilmember Felder for a round.
Thank you.
Chairman Thompson, good to see you. First question, how does the Public Service Commission balance the financial needs of utility companies with protecting consumers from excessive rate increases?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first, I want to congratulate you and welcome you to the council and welcome you to this committee. That's a great question. It's probably one of the hardest things that we do. What is the appropriate amount of investment into the system to ensure reliability? I think oftentimes we all take for granted when we hit that light switch, the lights come on, or that on a cold day, we walk into the room and we can have it nice and warm because we have proper heating. So how do you ensure the right level of investment and balance it against what people can pay? It's a very complex way in which we do it. We have a staff of approximately 75 people, and when we have these rate cases come in, they are all consumed because this is what it's all about. And so I can't give you all the magic to it, right? But I can tell you it's a very detail-oriented process. We have engineers, we have economists, we have accountants, lawyers all looking at these issues and trying to make sure that what we do leads to just and reasonable rates, and we're making a very well-balanced decision.
Thank you. As you probably are aware, Ward 7 is comprised of a multitude of neighbors with various incomes. And I think about our most vulnerable and low-income residents with this next question. With that being said, my next question is, can you walk us through the process of how utility rates are being set for PEPCO, DC Water, and Washington Gas?
Yeah. So I'll say DC Ward is a little different because they don't fall under our jurisdiction there. But with Washington Gas and Pepco, typically what happens is, and I'm going to speak at a very high level, they submit an application. And in that application, they provide a number of justifications as to why they need a rate increase. And sometimes it's around investments that they've made in the system. So by law, they are allowed to recover expenditures and costs for prudently incurred expenditures. So say something happens and a feeder goes down, they had to replace it. They're allowed to get recovery for that. Perhaps they need to stand up a new office to work on interconnection. They're allowed to get recovery for that. And so they come to us with a application with a number of different rate making adjustments and different programs in which they're seeking recovery for and looking at past investments. Parties, typically the Office of People's Counsel, AOBA, DOEE, the federal government, GSA, sometimes DC Water, and maybe one Sierra Club, a few other parties, then file testimony either in support of certain aspects of it or refuting certain aspects of it. We then have the company then has a chance for rebuttal. We will then decide the type of hearing that we'll have, whether it's going to be a public whether it's going to be an evidentiary or legislative style hearing. We'll also solicit input from the community. And during this entire time, staff is looking at this day in, day out. This is a complex process. I think our last rate case took somewhere upwards of 15 to 18 months. So this is not something that's decided in a day. It's a very intense process filled with a lot of information, pleadings that are over 3,000 pages. And based upon all the record in front of us, we then come to the point where we can make a decision on what constitutes a just and reasonable rate.
I appreciate that. My next question is pertaining to preventing unfair billing practices. What oversight mechanisms are in place to ensure that utility companies do not take advantage of residents through unfair billing practices?
Right. So we have our Office of Consumer Services that is usually the first line, right? So if a consumer has a complaint about their bill, let's say they call Pepco, Washington Gas, Verizon, and they're not getting the response they want, they can call our office. And our office will oftentimes serve, we'll have what's called an informal dispute resolution process. And they will serve as an intermediary between the person and the utility to try and get to a resolution. Now, if that doesn't work, they can go through a formal hearing process, which is another process. But that's one type of consumer protection, certainly with the utilities. We also have protections for consumers who use third-party suppliers. So say you decide you want to get your electricity or your gas from a competitive supplier, you can follow that same process as well. We have a consumer bill of rights that those third-party suppliers are held to, and we have not been shy about taking action when necessary. In fact, a couple of years ago, we actually decertified a third-party supplier for unscrupulous activities, and so.
And just a follow-up question, how many complaints have you received regarding problems, issues, or concerns with utility companies? And if so, are there any common themes that you're seeing?
Yeah, I don't have that exact number in front of me, but what I can tell you, you start talking about common themes. One of the themes that we've heard about, of course, is our interconnection process. So mainly what that is for residents who are trying to, or not even just residents, but people who are trying to interconnect their solar system to the Pepco grid. That has been a source of constant complaint. And so one of the things that we've done, we've done a number of things over the years, but most recently, what we've done is we've instituted an interconnection investigation to really look at the root cause of some of these issues, some of which are around billing, some of which are around estimates, but there's also some issues around some more technical matters as well.
How frequently does the Public Service Commission meet with utility companies to discuss rates, service quality, and customer concerns?
Yes. So With respect to rates, I would say we talk about rates primarily, at least at the commissioner level, when the application is filed, right? And during that process. With regards to other issues, it varies, right? Depending upon what's going on at that given time. Sometimes, I'll get briefings on what gas prices are looking like going into the winter heating season, right? And so we can have an idea of what to expect on that end. Perhaps there's an issue with an outage. I may get a call about that. So it really depends, and it depends on the situation.
Just one quick follow-up question, and I do want to be mindful of my time. What opportunities do resident have to weigh in on the rate setting decisions? if
Right.
any?
So two main ways. One, through the community hearings that we have.
Okay.
With the Washington Gas case, we will be setting community hearings soon in that case. And again, we like to go out to the community for at least 2 of those hearings.
Okay.
And so once those dates and those locations are set, we push them out through all of our channels through our website, social media, press release, just so people know as well. There's also the ability always to file a letter on the record, and that simply means you can send an email with your statement to our commission secretary. You can send it to me. If you send it to me, I will direct staff to put on the record. But plenty of ways to engage, and then also you have the Office of the People's Counsel, who is a statutory representative for the district resident, where they can engage them as well to make sure that their point of view is heard.
Mr. Chairman, do I have time for another question, or you need more? Okay. How does the Public Service Commission coordinate with the Office of the People's Counsel to ensure that residents who need support resolving complaints get the supports they need? And do you know how many residents have had to use the Office of People Counsel to help resolve complaints?
Yeah, so it's my understanding that the Office of People's Counsel has a dispute resolution process as well. So I don't know all the details of what they do. What I can say is, and I talked a little bit earlier about the utility discount program working group. They're certainly instrumental there in terms of us partnering with them to make sure that we're getting the information out to residents of the District of Columbia. There's also just many open lines of communication, I think, up and down both of our agencies. Sometimes I'll see stuff and I'll tell my staff, hey, let's make sure that OPC has awareness on this and make sure that they're getting input. And they do the same thing, vice versa. I think it's a very collaborative and collegial relationship.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. And we'll do another round if necessary as well. Chairman, the committee sends pre-hearing questions to every agency under its purview and receives responses from the agencies around sexual harassment. For the benefit of the public, does the PSC have a primary and secondary sexual harassment officer? And has the PSC received any complaints of sexual harassment in fiscal year 2024 or 2025 to date?
Yes, we have a primary and secondary show in place. And we did receive one complaint in 2024. We have not received anything in 2025 to date.
If there anything you can share in terms of the status of that complaint you received in FY 2024?
That complaint that was filed in 2024 was fully investigated in accordance with the mayor's order and has since been closed.
Okay. As a result of the Clean Energy DC Omnibus Amendment Act, you established an equity advisory working group, which we're glad to see. I wanted to just ask if there's any status updates in terms of that working group.
Yes, and so to give a little more context to that, as part of the Clean Energy Omnibus Act, the commission undertook the exercise of creating a benefit cost analysis framework. And as part of that framework, we were charged with taking into account equity and other hard to measure metrics. So the equity advisory group that you're talking about, that's part of the BCA framework. And then so the first part is a very technical part, but the second part is a very, as I like to say, a very real life part of it, right? And so the equity and some of those metrics. And so that advisory group that they have started working. What will happen is they will develop some metrics that will then be combined with the other part of the BCA framework, and then together that will be the BCA framework that we use to evaluate a lot of the programs that the utilities submit as we start to get down the road in this clean energy transition.
Got it. Got it. And then there's another question that I'm asking of all the agencies that appear before the committee, just really related to federal funding. Because we've seen some things that are coming out and creating a bit of uncertainty around federal funding, particularly. So I'll just ask, is there any funding that you all have seen, or is there anything that you get from the feds that are at risk to your knowledge?
So we do receive one grant a year for our pipeline. It's from PHMSA. It's our pipeline safety management. It's roughly, I think, about $500,000, and it covers 3 FTEs. It also requires a matching amount from the agency of about 20%. We have not heard anything yet in terms of those funds being endangered, but it's certainly a situation that we are closely monitoring at the programmatic level, as well as our AFO is managing it, watching it as well.
And thank you for that. In terms of in FY 2025, you all launched 8 new KPIs in addition to the 4 KPIs implemented last fiscal year. Can you briefly describe these new KPIs and how the commission is working to meet and or exceed those standards?
Yes. So a majority of those KPIs are KPIs that are consistent with the directive of the mayor's office in terms of monitoring and looking at some of the hiring practices, things such as number of new employees that are just residents, things of that nature. And sorry, I'm just trying to pull them exactly. I got them right here. There we go. Yeah, so yeah, percentage of employees that are district residents, new hires at district residents. Some of these certainly are. I think the ones that are agency specific to us that we continue to focus on are the ones number of solar megawatts added to the electric grid to meet the goals of the local Solar Expansion Amendment Act of 2022, the percentage of RPS applications processed within 30 days of the submission date, certainly our PHMSA rating, and the number of consumer complaints resolved at an informal level. Those are certainly the ones that are very applicable to our day-to-day workload.
I appreciate it. I want to ask before I turn back to Councilmember Felder, because you touched on this in your opening testimony. I think I mixed up your pages, but I highlighted it. There we go, page 3, PJM capacity prices. Starting in June of this year, I believe, residential and small commercial SOS customers are going to experience rate increases in their electricity costs due to higher capacity prices across the region, resulting from the recent base residential auction conducted by PJM Interconnection. And we understand you filed a series of comments you talked about a little bit in your opening testimony through the organization of PJM States, Inc., regarding the rules that govern the auction. I want to give you an opportunity to expand a little bit in sort of in less esoteric terms, what that means for consumers and how we got there, and then what the role is that you and others have with respect to the organization of PJM States in terms of those increased costs.
Yeah, so I'll go on a little educational tour here. So the way we get, everybody, I think, recognize that we don't actually have any power plants in DC. And so us, along with a large majority of the mid-Atlantic states, from here to Pennsylvania, going north, and then as far west as about Illinois, we're all part of this regional grid called PJM. And PJM, their sole duty is to take power from power plants and move it around the grid. Part of the way they do this in an effective manner is they're supposed to have these auctions, the base residual auction, where they are buying capacity. That means that there are enough on the worst day or the day of the greatest need, there's going to be enough electricity to power everybody who needs it on the grid. So they have these auctions. Well, as we all know, there's been certainly power plant retirements due to age, due to climate commitments, what have you. There's been less power coming on the grid because of some of the same reasons, as well as interconnection queue problems, supply chain issues with respect to solar issues. And so what you're starting to see is a tightening of supply, a tightening of those electrons that keep these buildings lit. Oh, yeah, as well as increasing data centers. And so which use large amounts of power. And so due to this constricting of supply and an increased demand, you're going to get higher electricity prices. And so while that premise is certainly true, what some of the states of which I lead, which are the organization of PJM states, we said, well, we need to make sure that the market rules that govern this auction are correct. So making sure that every resource is bidding, not just baseload fossil fuel resources, but as well as intermittent resources, which are becoming a larger and larger portion of the PJM queue and fuel mix. We also need to make sure that we're using the right reference unit for determining the cost. We also need to ensure that the right points on the graph in terms of determining the price cap are accurate. And so all these things were things that we filed before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission about why we need to make sure the market rules are correct. Now, those are all pending before FERC. We certainly hope that FERC makes this ruling soon so that we have some certainty going into the next auction. We were able to get PJM to delay the auction once, but we really don't want to continue that auction delay because it creates greater uncertainty. So, but again, what I'll say is, even if all of these market rules are changed and accepted by FERC as being just and reasonable, we're still looking at continued price increases. And I could pretty convincingly say, without a doubt, that we're looking for price increases, or we're looking at price increases on that side of the house year over year for the next couple of years.
Okay, no, I appreciate that response. That's a pretty sobering response, but it is necessary nonetheless, and I appreciate the explanation for folks who are at home who need to hear this. I'm going to turn back to Councilmember Felder for a round.
Picking up where I left off pertaining to community input, are there any advisory boards or public engagement initiatives where residents can have a say-so in utility oversight?
That's a great question. In terms of utility oversight, I don't have a particular board. There aren't any public-facing boards associated with the commission. What I would certainly say is I think what I've always said and what I try to do, one of my main jobs and my commissioners' main jobs as chairman and commissioners is to be open and accessible to the public. And so part of that includes, not only having people come in, but also going out into the community. And so when we talk about these Office of Consumer Services events, oftentimes I'll go to them. Oftentimes my fellow commissioners will go. There are community events that I go to outside of that, right? That other commissions put on where I'm present so that people can have direct access to me. In fact, 2 weeks ago, the Commission on Climate had a workshop at the MLK Library on a Saturday morning. So I was there, but the director of DOE talking about climate initiatives and all of our roles in it. And so while there's not a direct oversight ability, there's certainly that engagement.
Earlier, during during a earlier question, I heard you talk about as various utility companies go out to the community, you may be there listening in. I want to reverse that. How can we strengthen community participation in these discussions?
Well, I certainly think, what we do around the public hearings is certainly important. I think that the Clean Energy Summit is certainly a great way that we work to engage local residents. In fact, this year we did something different in which we were very intentional about making sure we had the youth from the district. So we had people, we had young kids from a middle school as well as a high school come and participate to listen firsthand. Through our internship program, we also bring youth from the district, either who are in school here in the district or who are born and raised in the district, to participate and learn about what we do. And so those are certainly some of the ways. We also recognize that nobody is perfect, right? So if there are certainly additional ways that you would like us to engage, we would certainly be open. I'd love to have the discussion with you.
I appreciate that. Looking ahead, what strategies is the PSC considering to prevent sharp increases in utility rates in coming years?
Yeah. So one of the big things that we have, of course, the utility discount programs. And one of the things that we did during COVID was we increased the eligibility. It used to be 75% of the AMI, and now it's 85% of the AMI. That allows for greater eligibility. I think what's incumbent upon us is to ensure that we are getting every person who is eligible, because we have estimates of who should be eligible, and that number far exceeds actual enrollment. And so one of the things that we're always talking about is how do we increase that enrollment? We work with a lot of the groups on the ground, and we also advertise through various outlets, but still there's still more work to be done.
Are there any policies or programs in place to protect low-income residents from financial burdens as rising utility costs may increase? And I heard you talk about some of them in your testimony. If you could just repeat those,
Yeah.
that would be wonderful.
So with the on the gas side, you have the residential essential service program, which basically, if you sign up for it, the distribution portion of your bill is zero, and that equates to roughly almost a 50% reduction in your bill. So it's important that you sign up for it. Same thing on the electric side. If you that program is called the Residential Aid Discount Program, and if you sign up for that, again, it's a 50%, almost 50% decrease on your bill. It means the distribution portion of your bill is free. Another program that's not administered by us, but equally as helpful, is a LIHEAP program that's administered through DOEE. That's a great program to get additional energy assistance. And then, of course, there's the Verizon program for those of us who still have landlines, where you can get essential service, and that's a huge discount as well.
Thank you. How does the Public Service Commission ensure that utility companies are investing in infrastructure improvements while keeping costs reasonable for consumers?
Yeah, and that comes through the rate making process. They know that if this expenditure is not prudently made, they risk not getting cost recovery for it. And that process is certainly a thorough process in which the team does multiple, for lack of a better word, investigations into the costs that are being incurred to make sure that they are accurate, make sure that this investment is needed. There's also the opportunity for the people who participate in our rate cases, Office of People Counsel, to challenge those costs. PEPCO has what they call an annual reconciliation filing process, in which parties have the ability to go through that document and say, oh, this cost was not prudently incurred. I want to challenge that expenditure.
Are there any upcoming regulation changes that will impact utility rates in the district that you may be aware of?
I'm not going to say necessarily regulations, but I will say looking at just larger implications, right? So we talked a little bit about the PJM-based residual auction and how that will increase prices. And as data centers become more and more prevalent, they use the equivalent, some of the larger ones use almost the equivalent of the electricity of small cities, right? And so those things popping up on the grid and sucking up the supply will drive scarcity in the electricity market and increase prices. You also look at price volatility around in tariffs, right? So we talk about solar, tariffs with solar, all that plays in electricity prices. You also talk about some of the things we're seeing on the federal level in terms of IRA monies being taken back, reducing the incentives for some of the various policies that have been implemented. So all these things will certainly have effects on electricity bills, some of which the commission will be able to help mitigate through our utility discount programs, but some of which customers will feel the full brunt of.
Thank you, Chairperson Thompson. That concludes my questions. I appreciate all the work that you and your team are doing.
Thank you, Council Member.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. Chairman Thompson, when can we expect completion of the Meadow Green Court and Berry Farm Health Pump pilot projects?
Yeah, so the Berry Farms project is actually under construction right now. I do not have an actual target end date for that, but that one at least is under construction. The Meadow Green Court, that one is a little bit earlier in the process. And I think that's in the design phase, but we can certainly follow up with you directly and provide updated timelines for both those projects.
That would be helpful if you can follow up with us. According to your pre-hearing responses to questions we asked, the Mid-Atlantic Hydrogen Hub did not receive funding from the DOE to establish a regional clean hydrogen hub under the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act. Is the commission exploring any other opportunities to incorporate hydrogen as an alternative power source for the region?
So this is certainly what I will say. That was an opportunity that Washington Gas pursued on its own. And we encouraged the utilities to try and take advantage of the monies that were being made available through the federal government, through the IRA, through the IIJA, Build Back Better, all the various bills. So that's kind of that. What I will say is I know that in Washington Gas's initial climate business plan, there was talk of or discussion of using blended fuels to reduce GHG emissions from the gas they put into their pipes. The commission did not approve that plan. We did not deny it. And as I mentioned earlier, we asked for updated plans. And so when we see those updated plans, we'll probably get a little bit more granularity and visibility into that.
Okay. During calendar year 2024, the commission staff certified 2,835 new renewable energy portfolio standard solar facilities within the district. I don't know if y'all categorize it or keep the data in this way, but I'd be curious to know how many of those facilities are currently serving lower income households.
Yeah, so we don't keep the data in that way, but what I can tell you is that in the past year, we certified 57 new CREFs. And CREFs are community renewable energy facilities, and those benefits, lower energy prices from the electricity generated, go directly to low-income facilities. So I can tell you that we had 57 new CREFs, and those benefit low to moderate income families. In 2024, we have a total of 400, I think 24 CREFs in DC total. There are certainly a number of individual residential solar facilities that are sponsored, I believe, by DOE and DCSEU through the Solar for All program. So there might be some data there, but we personally do not track individual solar systems in that manner.
Okay, appreciate that. I have one other question I want to ask. I want to talk just briefly, if you could, about interconnection fees for home solar systems. As I understand it, some residents who want to install solar panels on their roofs get told by the utility that they have to pay a $10,000 and more to upgrade the system before they can do so. I see that the utility put forward a suggestion in April 2022 proposing a flat $280 distribution upgrade fee to upgrade. I don't know if there's any status updates to where that is at this point.
Yeah, so we ultimately denied that program primarily because that program did not have enough transparency to it. We didn't, there wasn't enough data as to why this was the optimal number. And we wanted to also make sure that the root cause of the problem was being addressed. And so one of the things that we did at the end of 2024 was we instituted an interconnection investigation that looks at a number of things. I believe in the order we listed 13 topics, and we've had our first meeting on it. And there are currently 7 topics, 7 scheduled meetings, one of which deals with interconnection costs, transparency, and accountability. And so it is the commission's hope that through these technical conferences, we're certainly able to address some of the root cause issues before we institute a cost recovery mechanism.
Now, I don't know if you just touched on this, but just also, I understand that some companies are trying to create the larger scale solar installations. I don't know if you touched on that, but my understanding is that they've been running into similar issues in terms of the interconnection problems. And I don't know if there's any response you can provide around what you're hearing about that, or what the plans might be to address some of those challenges that companies who are trying to create the larger scale solar installations are running into.
Yeah, so that's also part of the investigation as well. We call those oftentimes the level 2 interconnections, and those are the interconnections that require the upgrades, and that's oftentimes those large facilities. A few years ago, we put in a cost sharing mechanism such that, especially for the CREFs, that cost wouldn't be completely borne by the developer because, and some of it will be borne at least by the utility, and they can recover it through a rate case. But this is also part of that same interconnection investigation.
All right, I appreciate it. I don't have any additional questions at this time. Look forward to any follow-up that you all are going to provide. If we have additional questions, we will certainly follow up with you and your team. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we transition to our next agency?
No, again, I would like to thank you for your support. I'd like to thank my team here today for coming without asking for their support, and look forward, as always, to continue working with you and your staff.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. Next, we have the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking, or DISB, as it's also referred. The department regulates financial service businesses in the District of Columbia by administering DC's insurance, securities, and banking laws, rules, and regulations. DISB's primary goal is to ensure residents of the District of Columbia have access to a wide choice of insurance, securities, and banking products and services, and that they're treated fairly by the companies and individuals that provide these services. DISB also aims to provide a positive business climate that encourages fair and open competition, and to create the number of financial service firms conducting business in the District of Columbia, to increase the number of financial service firms conducting business in the district. In addition, as part of its mission, DISB strives to ensure that all relevant customer protection laws are strictly enforced. Now we're going to hear from our government witness, including Karima Woods, Commissioner of the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking, and her team. As is the practice before the committee, we're going to swear you all in. If you all could raise your right hands before we get started to be sworn in. Thank you. Do you each swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Council of the District of Columbia and the Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Let the record reflect that they've all answered in the affirmative. And with that, Commissioner Woods, whenever you're ready, you can begin your testimony. Thanks for joining us here this afternoon.
Great. Thank you very much, Chairperson McDuffie, and good morning to all. Good morning, Chairperson McDuffie, committee members, staff, and district residents. I am Karima Woods, and it is my absolute pleasure to serve the district as the Commissioner of the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking, also known as DSB. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on the department's significant accomplishments during fiscal years 2024 and 2025 to date, and on DSB's unwavering commitment to empower district residents and small business owners in their financial journey. The department regulates insurance, securities, banking, and other financial services in the District of Columbia. DSB's mission is threefold. First, to cultivate a regulatory environment that protects consumers and attracts and retains financial services firms to the district. Second, to empower and educate residents on financial matters. And third, to provide financing for small businesses. DSB does this by effectively regulating the district's financial services industry to ensure district residents have access to a wide array of financial services, products, and providers. DSB also works to sustain a district business climate that encourages fair and open competition. A little bit about the ways in which we deliver on our regulatory mandate. The department is committed to keeping insurance fair, accessible, and affordable in the district. One of the ways DSB accomplishes this is through the review of individual and small employer group health plans sold through DC HealthLink, which led to $1.5 million in savings for district residents and employees in FY24. In FY24, the department completed and published a first-of-its-kind report on unintentional bias in auto insurance. DSB is currently working on the next phase, which will include evaluating and prioritizing the next steps the district can take to reduce claim and premium differences by race. A little bit about the ways in which we protect residents from financial fraud and scams. DSB's Compliance and Analysis Division, Enforcement and Consumer Protection Division, and Securities Bureau work collaboratively to protect consumers who are most at risk from fraud, scams, and unfair or illegal practices. Through the Consumer Complaints Review process, the department held financial institutions accountable and compliant with district laws and regulations. In FY24, the department closed 1,032 consumer complaints and recovered more than $1.2 million for constituents. The Compliance and Analysis Division educated residents through 25 community events on topics that included estate planning, mental health parity, flood insurance, reverse mortgages, and fraud awareness. The Securities and Banking Bureaus collected over $1.7 million in fines from securities and money services businesses in FY24 and 25 to date. In FY24, the department launched its online scam tracker. By using the scam tracker, the public can conduct searches and keep up to date with scams facing district residents. The district is one of 3 jurisdictions in the country to provide this kind of online tool to residents. A little bit about foreclosure prevention and mediation. Another way that DSB fulfills its mission is by actively seeking to prevent foreclosures and assist homeowners in keeping their homes. In FY24, the Foreclosure Prevention and Mediation Program was successful in helping 113 homeowners obtain relief under the Homeowner Assistance Fund. The Foreclosure Prevention Program prevented 264 foreclosures in FY24. These efforts resulted in saving $137.7 million in property value in FY24 and $3.3 million in property value in the first quarter of FY25. A little bit about our student loan ombudsman work. DSB's Office of the Student Loan Ombudsman led the district's effort in collaborating with the U.S. Department of Education, the district's Office of the Attorney General, and other district government agencies, along with the Student Borrower Protection Center, to provide 31 virtual and in-person workshops about the public service loan forgiveness process that reached 2,772 residents. In FY24, we are pleased that the Office of Student Loan Ombudsman's direct assistance to district residents resulted in the discharge of $1.6 million of student loan debt, a 28% increase over the prior fiscal year. Additionally, from October 1st, 2021 to December 1st of 2024, 5,510 district student loan borrowers received $510.5 million of loan forgiveness through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program and the Income-Driven Repayment One-Time Adjustment. A little bit about our work as it relates to financial education and empowerment. Providing equitable and inclusive access to financial products and services is an ongoing priority for Mayor Bowser. Through the department's Office of Financial Empowerment and Education, DSBE provided financial empowerment programs such as Bank on DC, Financially Fit DC, the Financial Empowerment Center, and Opportunity Accounts. At FY24 and 25 to date, the Bank on DC program engaged with workforce development, returning citizens, and community-based organizations to connect 9,371 residents to safe and affordable banking products and services. This significant effort reduced the number of unbanked district residents from 8% to 4%. Additionally, the United Planning Organization manages DSBE's Financial Empowerment Center in Ward 8. The Financial Empowerment Center provides low to moderate income residents with one-on-one counseling to help build and protect assets, address financial challenges, and plan for a viable financial future. During FY24, the center engaged with 1,038 district residents and conducted more than 410 client counseling sessions and 67 financial education events. A little bit about our work related to small businesses. The department is committed to supporting the city's economic development strategy to increase the share of minority-owned businesses by 33% and create 35,000 new jobs in high-growth sectors through the department's DC BizCap program, also known as the Business Capital Access Program. Through DC BizCap, DSBE provides capital to district small business owners and entrepreneurs, including those who are certified business enterprises. More than 80% of these small businesses are minority and/or woman-owned. In FY24, the department provided more than $2.5 million in funding to 8 district small businesses in wards 2, 4, 5, 6, and 8. In FY24, DC BizCap support helped create and retain 497 jobs and provided $5.4 million in private capital to district small businesses. Since the inception of the DC BizCap program, DSBE has provided more than $22.5 million in funding to 47 businesses across all 8 wards of the district. The support was used to help the small businesses access more than $63 million in private capital. As a result, participating small businesses were able to create or retain more than 2,418 district-based jobs. In closing, as the district continues to work towards its comeback, DSBE is still firmly committed to empowering, protecting, and advancing residents and small business owners in their financial journeys. DSBE is committed to equitable access to high-quality financial services in insurance, securities, and banking. I encourage all residents to visit DSBE's website at disb.dc.gov to learn more about our consumer protection and financial empowerment services. I would like to thank you, Chairperson McDuffie, and the members of the committee for your leadership and support. I appreciate the opportunity to share the many ways that DSBE fulfills its financial services mission, and I look forward to continuing to work with the committee. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods, for your testimony. I want to note that we've been joined by at-large Councilmember Christina Henderson, and we're going to do 7-minute rounds. As I have with all the hearings that I've conducted today and plan to during performance oversight, I want to start with follow-up from the committee's hearing with public witnesses. Arthur Slade, Vice President and Shop Steward of AFSCME Local 2743, testified with some concerns about DSBE. Commissioner, in the department's pre-hearing responses, it wrote that on January 27, 2025, the Public Employee Relations Board issued an order that denied the union's request for disciplinary action against management officials, but granted the union's petition to pay the employee an arbitrary 7% performance allowance plus interest and post a violation notice for 30 days, emphasis on that last part. However, the department plans to appeal the final decision by the board to the DC Superior Court. Why hasn't the department posted the violation notice? Mr. Slade believed the violation notice to be a separate issue from the specific appeal that the department will be filing. In other words, is the appeal only focused on the payment aspect of PERB's decision? If so, why not post a notice?
So thank you very much for the question, Council Member. And if you don't mind, I'd like to respond to Mr. Slade's testimony in its totality while addressing the unfair labor practice issue. First, I want to just say that I remain committed to my relationship with the union and ensuring that we're able to address and work out issues as they come about. That commitment still stands. It was a bit unfortunate to hear Mr. Slade's testimony in its whole. I think he painted a very grim picture of the department and the work of the agency. And I do stand behind the investments and the commitments that we've made to the employees and to our overall space, environment, and culture of the agency. I think his testimony overall reminded me that regardless of what you may do to maybe support the work of your agency, there's always going to be someone who finds something wrong with it. And so while he complained about some of the investments in things like a staff retreat or a standing desk or enclosing the commissioner's suite, there are many staff members who have shared with me that they appreciate the time and attention that the agency is placing on that. And I'll add that there are also other union leaders who have expressed that to the department as well. My team and I have made it a commitment to meet with the union throughout the year. I have a standing meeting on my schedule with the union to address issues as they come about. And so to hear his issues with the staff retreat, the standing desk, and a whole host of other things was a bit surprising. But again, I stand behind the commitment. Our staff retreat was a great success. The deputy mayor came. She talked about her work and she talked about the mayor's work. The theme of our retreat was embracing change, empowering growth, and enhancing impact. We got a lot of good feedback from the retreat, and that feedback is being used to inform operations and some of the issues that staff shared with management during the retreat. I will also say that it's a bit unfortunate because Mr. Slade didn't attend the retreat in 2023, and I believe he came the last hour of the retreat in 2024. So there were a lot of other staff members that really got a lot out of it. He referenced a MOU for $300,000. Yes, the department had a MOU with DGS for about $318,000. $146,000 of that was actually spent. The rest was not spent, but that $146,000 went to standing desk. It went to enclosing the commissioner's suite, which includes about 4 or 5 different offices for the deputies and also cubicle spaces. And that was done primarily for security purposes, and I can elaborate on that offline. In addition, those funds went to repairing HVAC in the office. We also were required by DCNet, excuse me, to purchase equipment and voice services upgrades, which was about $119,000. So I share all that because I think it's important to fully understand why we spent that money. And that money came out of our non-personnel services budget. And again, I stand behind that, and I look forward to continuing to make investments in all of DSB staff in addition to the overall space. As it relates to the unfair labor practice and also the posting of the notice, the matter at this point has not been bifurcated. The department is appealing the full decision, the unfair labor practice and monetary award. As the matter has not necessarily reached full disposition, the posting is not required at this time.
And that was one of the questions that I asked Mr. Slade, because I wasn't aware whether or not the posting was required pending appeal. So it is not required, is what you're saying, pending
Yes.
appeal. Got it. What about, just more generally speaking, I suspect I'll know the answer to this question, but I think it's important to ask. The concerns raised about union members at DSB working outside of their classification. What's your understanding about that, generally speaking, not necessarily related to the complaint, unless you have something specific you want to share? I understand it's pending, but what's your understanding about concerns raised around that?
So, and yes, I'll touch on that. Labor initially advised the department of their concerns regarding investigators working outside of their duties. That was shared with us, I want to say, back in April of 2024. And we worked with DCHR to conduct a review and advise labor that we did not agree with their assertion. We further advised that the appropriate action was to engage directly with DCHR to request a desk audit. This is in accordance with the CBA and also with the DPM. And I'll add that rather than proceeding with this guidance, labor decided to file a grievance. In October of 2024, labor submitted a desk audit request to the department, and we redirected that request to DCHR. And it's my understanding that DCHR is currently reviewing the positions.
Thank you for that response. I'm going to ask you on my next round about federal grants, as I've asked all the agencies that have appeared before us, just to tee it up for you. Actually, I won't get into it, but I'll come back on my second round. But I want to turn to Councilmember Henderson for a round.
Thank you, Chair McDuffie. And it's noon. So good afternoon, Commissioner. As you know, I chair the Committee on Health, and so we sort of have some overlapping jurisdiction as it pertains to health insurance matters. So I'm going to focus my questions on some of the health insurance matters that might have come before you all. I'm curious, I didn't have an opportunity to review all of the pre-hearing responses that you all submitted, but in terms of the complaints that come into DSB, where does health insurance matters rank amongst all of the various issues?
Thank you for that question, Council Member. I would say that when you look at the totality of complaints that the department receives, I mentioned in my testimony, in FY24, we received 1,032 complaints. I would say the majority of those complaints are insurance related. And when you break down those complaints, I would say that there is a high number that are related to health insurance. I can provide you with the exact number, but I know that year over year, the majority of the complaints that we receive is primarily insurance related.
Okay, which I think tracks with perhaps what we're hearing sort of nationwide on a variety of things. So this calendar year, so insurance year, started a new change in benefit programs that we are requiring here for insurance carriers in the district. For those who don't know, we work closely with DISB on an expanding access to fertility treatment bill, which was a very large undertaking, and I'm very glad that we were able to work with you all as well as the Health Benefit Exchange Authority to get this implemented. And I recognize that when there are changes in requirements, there might be some transition time. But my office has received a lot of calls and questions regarding perhaps the frontline staff of insurance carriers not necessarily knowing that there was a change in the law. And so I'm curious how you all are working with carriers to ensure that they have a clear understanding of what district law is pertaining to all of the varying benefit offerings.
So thank you, Council Member, for your question. And yes, we are aware that there were a number of complaints that came to our office regarding the change in the law. And so thanking you for directing those complaints our way, because that was our way of knowing that there was an issue. And so there have been a number of constituents that have reported that there are difficulties in understanding their options under the IVF law. And so once we became aware of the issue, we engaged with Care First because a lot of the complaints were coming related to Care First, and they informed us that they had a systems issue.
Okay.
And that there was a glitch that resulted in systems incorrectly updating the system with the new information. It's my understanding that that has been resolved since it's been brought to our attention. And I will say that Care First expeditiously responded and corrected the system. And so we thank them for that. I would say overall with national insurance organizations, sometimes information does take some time to fully disseminate, unfortunately. And so I think the issue you described is a direct example of that. But oftentimes as regulators, we don't know until the complaints start coming in.
Yes.
And when the complaints start coming in, that's when we really get involved and figure out what's going on. We regularly host our insurance advisory committee, and we have a health subcommittee meeting as well, where we share information on laws and requirements, and insurers also have an opportunity to share information with us as well. And so I would just say for any resident, if you experience any issues with your health insurance carrier or anything related to insurance and your policy, we do recommend that they reach out to our office, to our Consumer Complaints Division. We also recommend that they fully read on an annual basis their policy to understand what's covered and what's not, because oftentimes that's where the complication lies. But I do highly, highly recommend that they reach out to our office, and our team does a great job in investigating complaints.
That's the one thing that we try to tell constituents, right? I can't fix something if I don't know about it.
If I don't know about it.
And as regulators, you all can't address something with a particular carrier if you don't know about it as well. I want to switch. We're talking about health insurance, but given some of the things that are happening around the country in more nature disaster prone areas, there were lots of conversations about the adequacy of insurance coverage on a variety of other things, whether it be fire, flood, and things like that. In terms of our network coverage, do you feel comfortable where we are in terms of providers providing the full scope of services to consumers here in the district?
Yes, I feel very comfortable with the level of services that are provided here in the district. And I think there's a lot as it relates to the natural disasters that have occurred. I think even if you look here in the district over the last couple of years, we've had our own series of flood and water related events.
Right.
And that really did force us as an agency to really begin looking at or educating rather, district residents around what's in their homeowners policy and what's not. And so we have doubled down on encouraging residents to consider purchasing flood insurance because flood insurance is not included in homeowners insurance policies. And most residents don't know that until
yes.
there is a weather-related event, particularly if there's flooding that occurs.
And then they're looking for it and then they don't have it.
And then they don't have it.
Yeah.
And so I think my team has done a great job of really promoting the importance of flood insurance, identifying ways to go about getting it, whether you own a home or whether you rent out a place. It's important to make sure that you have the proper level of insurance. I would say overall, yes, there is a lot of consternation around these climate events and the impact that they can have on the insurance market overall. I think the main point to emphasize is that insurance is necessary. It's necessary to protect your property. It's necessary to protect your possessions. And I do encourage residents to continue to keep their insurance. I know from a number of articles that I've read, particularly related to the LA wildfires, there were a number of homeowners that had paid off their homes and they were good. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, many of them no longer kept their insurance. And it's devastating to watch what happened there. But I just say that it is important to make sure that you protect your property.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie.
I'm going to come, because I want to pick up where Councilmember Henderson just left off on some of the insurance things. It's later in my questions, so I'm going to ask it later in my questions.
That's fine.
But I did want to note the flood insurance notice requirements. I heard you talk about flood insurance,
Yes.
which is near and dear to me as a former Ward 5 council member when we had a lot of flooding in Bloomingdale, Edgewood, Eckington, and other places, that there is a notice requirement, even though flood insurance isn't included. In most policies, the insurers are required to provide notice to policyholders on a one-time basis. And I'm happy to go into a little bit more detail, but it is 31-2502-28A in the code that we adopted some years ago when all the flooding was happening, that I'm sure you'll remember in DC and Ward 5 in particular. Let me turn back to the federal.
that point, council member, I've even noticed in my own policy, it says flood insurance is not included.
Yep, that's the law that we passed, so that people are aware of it. They don't have to offer it, but they have to provide notice that it is not included, so that policyholders can add that rider if they so choose. Approximately 1/4 of the district's gross funds budget is comprised of federal funds. According to the fiscal year 2025 approved budget, Disby's budget include no federal grants. I'm not sure that's correct, but I wanted to ask you about that, and if anything is at risk.
Repeat the approved budget part, please.
I was saying that according to the fiscal year 2025 approved budget, Disby's budget includes no federal grants. Is that correct?
So we do have at least 2 federal grants in our budget that's related to the Department of Health and Human Services through CSIO. And that is for our state flexibility grant. And we've had that grant for, I want to say, since FY 21-22. And that grant actually ends, the funds for that grant actually ends this fiscal year. And the second grant, which began this fiscal year, is the Expanding Access to Women's Health Grant. And that grant is for $609,000. The work of that grant just started this fiscal year. Both of our grants are through MOU transferred to the Health Benefit Exchange. I would say from the first grant, that grant was for about $671,000, 591,000 of which is spent. So there's about 80,000 left on that grant. And then the newer grant, that work is just starting. And so I've been in touch with Mila from the Health Benefit Exchange. Most of that work is subcontracted out to contractors. And so we are aware, we know that there are concerns right now as it relates to the federal government and funds, but it is something that we're closely monitoring. I would say that the other federal dollars that could be potentially in jeopardy if there are any freezes or changes that occur is related to our SSBCI program. So we have received our first tranche of funding, which is $19.8 million. That funding is secure. At this time, we haven't heard anything else from Treasury about whether any future tranches. We have 2 more tranches that would be coming to the district. We don't know what the status of those are at this time.
Okay, and was the 19 million you mentioned the tranche that is directed to DISB, or part of it's going to DISB, part of it is going to DIMPED?
So part of it is going to DISB, part of it was transferred to DIMPED. And so the entire 19.8 million is for the district, and it's in DISB's budget, and 8.5 million of that has been transferred to DIMPED for the Venture Capital Fund.
Okay, and that's already in hand, but how much is what was the entirety of the grant that would be coming to the district if it still happens? There were 2 more tranches to be
The
distributed?
entirety of the SSBCI 2.0 allocation of funds is $62 million.
Right, okay,
And that those funds are divvied up in 3 tranches over a period of time.
got it. Thank you. Any other impact outside of federal grants? Any impact on the Office of the Student Loan Ombudsman in terms of federal executive orders, actions?
I would
hiring
say
freezes?
that, the impact is to be determined. We have a statute here in the district which establishes the Office of Student Loan Ombudsman. And that statute is very clear as to what the role of that office is. Part of that role is to ensure that we're providing guidance and information to students and families on college funding, to provide information about student loan repayments, about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And so we're committed to continuing to do that work with our residents, and knowing that as changes may occur, particularly with the Department of Education, with the status of student loans, that our residents are going to need even more guidance and even more support in understanding and navigating this very complex landscape that we're faced with.
Right. I've asked the agencies that appear before me today, as I will the others in the future who appear before this committee, about sexual harassment policy. And the committee sends pre-hearing questions to every agency, as it has to DISB. For the benefit of the public, does the department have a primary and secondary sexual harassment officer? And has the department received any complaints of sexual harassment in fiscal year 2024 and or 2025 to date?
So yes, the department does have a primary and secondary officer. The primary officer is Catrice Purdy, who is our Chief of Policy and Administration, and our secondary officer is Marlene Simmons, who is our Human Resources Specialist. And to date, we do not have any complaints from FY24 or 25.
All right, just to pick back up on the SSBCI funds, can you just describe how the funds are broken down in terms of the plan to get it out the door to participating businesses, or just what the plans are for the agency about?
Definitely. I think it's important to distinguish, the department has SSBCI 1.0 funds, and we have SSBCI 2.0 funds. The 1.0 funds were allocated to the district through the Jobs Act of 2010. We received $13.2 million, and the majority of those funds have already been dispersed. The second bucket of funds, the SSBCI 2.0 program, that was through the 2021 American Rescue Plan Act. And the district was allocated, as I mentioned before, $62 million in SSBCI funding, 19.8 million of which the district has received. Both the 1.0 and the 2.0 funds both have a collateral support program and a loan participation program. The 1.0 program is the only one that also has the innovation finance program. For the 1.0, 197,000 is left available for the collateral support program. 313,000 is available for the loan participation program, and 330,000 is available for the innovation finance program. For 2.0, being that we're just getting it kind of up and operational, as I mentioned, 8.5 million of that has been transferred to DMPED for the venture capital fund, and the remaining $11.2 million remains with the department for our collateral support program and also our loan participation program. I would say overall, we are in the process of getting particularly the loan participation program moving forward. So we just recently received budget authority for those funds. I think the original iteration of our responses to your questions, to the committee's questions, it was indicated that we didn't have budget authority, but we do have budget authority now. And we are moving forward in the process with issuing an RFP for CDFIs to administer that program. I think it's important to note that with the loan participation program, it includes 3 sub-programs. So it includes the DC Small Business Commercial Real Estate Program, and there's $4 million allocated for that. It also includes the DC Space and Equipment Loan Program, which has a $1.5 million allocation, and a DC Startup Small Business Loan Program, and that has a $500,000 allocation. Those will be 3 separate contracts that will go to 3 separate CDFIs to administer the funds. The structure is a little bit different from the way in which we had structured the program under 1.0, because we wanted to make sure that we were able to get the funds out the door, if you will, particularly to small businesses that need it the most. And so we're pleased that we're able to partner with lenders in order to do that. And so that's the difference in the structure. As it relates to the collateral support program, to date for FY 24 to 25 to date, I want to say we have spent about $1.25 million of those funds.
Thank you for that. And we may have some follow-up just based on what you just provided. Thank you for the response, though. Let me talk a little bit about climate change and insurance, pick up where some of the questions earlier. After the recent devastating wildfires in Los Angeles, Time magazine released an article entitled "Home Losses from the LA Fires Hasten an Uninsurable Future." What's the trickle-down effect of this latest disaster on the home insurance market in the district?
So thank you for the question. The department was anticipating questions about this because we have received a lot of questions from others about the large-scale impact. I want to first say that my heart goes out to the people of Los Angeles, the firefighters, those who've lost property, those who've lost loved ones. I am a native of Los Angeles, and so it does hit home for me. But I recognize that there is a lot of concern, and rightfully so. I have been in direct communication with my counterpart, Commissioner Lara from the state of California, and offered the district support in any way that we possibly can. I would also add that I know the commissioners across the United States will be convening soon, and this will be a topic of conversation. What I can say now is that I know there's a lot of speculation that's happening right now. I've read a ton of articles, including the Times Magazine article that you've referenced, about what the impact of these wildfires will have on the insurance market. And I would say that from the conversations we've had internally and from what I know, is that it truly is too soon to tell. A lot of the damage is still being assessed. Some of it has not even started to be assessed. So to try and speculate at this point what that dollar amount will look like and what the spread of that impact will be in other states, including the District of Columbia, I would say is really too soon to tell. And so I will also add that although the wildfires were vast and although the devastation is significant, there have been other climate-related events that have occurred in the United States and other states like Florida and Louisiana and Texas and you name it. And in those instances, the district has not seen an increase in rates. And so I do think it's important to note that not only is it too soon to tell, but I think one important takeaway is that just because an insurer may take losses, say in the state of California, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will be increasing rates here in the District of Columbia. And so I think that's an important to kind of get out there. Insurance companies operate in a competitive market. So increasing rates in one state or increasing rates across the board would put them in a position where they have to compete with other insurers that may not necessarily be increasing rates. And so there's a lot still to be determined. I know that my department has really been, head deep in the issue, and we will continue to update the committee as information comes about. And we will be scrutinizing rates. Again, we don't anticipate that it will have an impact, but we do scrutinize rates as they come in. And if we're seeing anything, we'll definitely flag it.
Please do. We definitely want you to keep us in the loop on that. If I'm a district homeowner, I imagine they're at home wondering about a lot of things, and you're probably getting some of those inquiries to your office, as you mentioned. They also might be wondering if the district has a cap on how much homeowner insurers are expected to cover in total claims before policyholders have to pay for any additional charges. Is that something that you might be able to answer for people who are at home wondering? If I'm a district homeowner, is there a cap on how much homeowners insurers are expected to cover in total claims before policyholders have to pay for any additional charges?
So I would say that if you have a replacement value, then no. If you have, say, a property that's 20 years or older that has depreciated and you have actual cash value, then you may be paying more. So some companies may not be willing to offer replacement coverage as much as they were before. Even if you have a replacement coverage, there are still limits on each policy, and insurers are only going to cover up to the limit. So we do encourage policyholders, as I mentioned before, to revisit their policies on an annual basis to really know what their policy covers and what it doesn't cover. And I do encourage residents to reach out to our office, our Consumer Complaint Division, if they have any questions or concerns, and we would be more than happy to further assist.
Thank you for that. It's an interesting consideration that we were thinking about in the committee, but Has the department noticed an increase in district property owners seeking coverage through the DC Property Insurance Facility?
So I would say that we have not necessarily seen any increase in that activity. We only receive information from the facility on an annual basis, and at this time, we haven't received the information from 2024. And over the years, we haven't seen a significant increase. I would say as of December 2024, there were only 135 policies through the facility and 73.7 million of insurance. I know that in a lot of the articles that I came across, there was a lot of information shared about the California FAIR Plan. And I would say that their plan is structured very differently from the district's plan. The district's plan shares jurisdiction with the Maryland plan, and it's much smaller in scale because we have a smaller population here in the district.
Got it. That was my next question, so I appreciate you mentioning that we share jurisdiction with the Maryland plan.
The Maryland has their own Maryland plan, but our plans are combined.
Got it. The committee's heard that due to rising costs, property and liability insurance for multifamily residential buildings has increased, and that in some cases, assault, battery, and firearm coverage have been eliminated in areas of the city with higher incidents of violent crime. Have you heard this, and what, if anything, is the department hearing around these challenges, and is the department concerned that some housing providers who didn't receive federal funds have decided to forego coverage?
So I would say that the department has heard snippets of it. And we've asked for a little more clarity around it because we've heard of some challenges from our housing agencies, our sister housing agencies, particularly related to affordable housing developers. And many of them have shared that premiums have gone up and it's been challenging to maintain the cost because of the increased premiums. We don't know what that is attributed to, and so there have been a set of questions that we have asked so that we can better assist. I'll also add that we recently heard from Councilmember Mendelson's office that shared somewhat of a similar concern. And so the information that we've requested is that if we could get more information so that we can further investigate, it would be helpful to know the property owners, who they are. It would be helpful to know what type of coverage they have and who their insurers are so that we can look at it in greater detail. And I would just say if any of the multifamily property owners are listening, they can also reach out to our office directly through our consumer complaints, and that we can look at it in more detail. We definitely plan to follow up with our housing agencies and also with Mendelson's office. But in order for us to really look at kind of what's going on, we need more additional information about that.
Yeah, can you also just make sure that you're prioritizing in terms of, I don't know what the time frame is in which you expect to get a response from your sister agencies in housing, but I would love for you to make sure that the response is also shared with the committee once you get it. I know you all are also have always been great in getting us to follow up responses, and we appreciate that, but this is something that is of concern to us, and so once you get it, if you could share it with the committee, we'd appreciate that.
Definitely. And I'll just also add, it would be helpful to, know one, who the property owners are, but also the time period we're looking at, because when you look across the board in terms of increases around insurance, we know that there have been a number of factors related to inflation, labor, cost of materials, et cetera. And so that has driven up the increase in prices. But as you've mentioned, some of these other areas we would want to look at more closely.
Okay. This is a performance oversight hearing, not a budget oversight hearing, but there's something that has come to the committee's attention that raises some concern I want to raise with you and hear your response. But last year during the budget process, the executive proposed increasing the amount of funding from the Securities and Banking Regulatory Trust Fund that is converted to local funds revenue by $1 million. When I asked whether this subtitle would adversely impact the operations of the Securities and Banking Bureau within DSB, You stated this subtitle would have a minor effect on the agency's operations, that regulatory functions and services would continue as planned, and that the department would seek additional revenue and grants to supplement DSB's fiscal year 2025 budget. In DSB's pre-hearing responses to the committee's pre-hearing questions, the department says that this sweep has, and I'm quoting here, created budget pressures and has prevented DSB from being able to fully perform its mandated regulatory and administrative functions, close quote. So reconcile that for me. What happened?
So I think part of your question, I will need to follow up with the committee on. I'm not aware of a plan to supplement the costs of SPR funds with any type of federal funds, grants, et cetera. And so DSB has only, as I mentioned, received SSBCI and also insurance-related funds. There has been a challenge regarding the sweep of I believe it's the banking and securities fund, and the cost of operations are increasing overall, as well as revenues are not necessarily increasing at the same rate. And so in the coming years, with either revenue increase or sweep amounts, we will need to make sure that the costs of operations are fully covered.
Okay, but there have not been any reprogramming requests on behalf of your department to the executive for funds to supplement anything that's been taken? Or no need for reprogramming requests in this area?
I don't want to misspeak, and so I'm not sure if any of my fellow colleagues have any insight on that. If not, I can definitely follow up with the committee.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to the follow-up. Also want to ask about, the department reported that the cost of living adjustment for union employees was approved in fiscal year 2025, but not budgeted for fiscal year 2025. Could this potentially affect DSB's ability to fill I got you, okay. I was, let me start that over because it's actually a quote from you all. I want to make sure I get it correct on the record, but you all reported that, I'm quoting here, the cost of living adjustment for union employees was approved for FY '25, but not budgeted for FY '25. This could potentially affect DSB's ability to fill all vacant positions, close quote. When the department wrote approved, did you mean by the department with the union in terms of the approval? What did you mean by approval?
So it's my understanding, and I'm looking to our Chief of Policy and Administration, but per the Executive Office of the Mayor, during the budget formulation process, agencies aren't allowed to budget for COLA. And so special purpose revenue funded agencies either will cover from personnel services, vacancy savings, or from non-personnel. And so for the current year COLA, it will be covered from existing vacancy savings.
And those funds are available to cover it, the increases?
I'm sorry, repeat your question.
So there are funds available within DSB's budget to cover the COLAs?
Yes, there are funds available to cover the COLAs. And my Chief of Policy and Administration shared with me that COLA is bargained for in the compensation agreement.
In other words, the union members receive the COLA increases on a regular basis, but non-union members are not getting the same increase?
That's correct.
Are the securities and banking regulatory trust fund changes part of the reason the funds aren't available for fiscal year 2025? Or is there another reason this wasn't identified during the FY 2025 budget process?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Are the securities and banking trust fund changes part of the reason the funds aren't available for fiscal year 2025? Or is there another reason this wasn't identified during the FY '25 budget process?
So I'm not aware if it's directly attributed to the sweep of the fund, but I do know it's an issue that tends to come up each year in some shape, form, or fashion. And I don't know, Catrice, if you want to add anything to that.
And while you all are working on that, just another question, because, given the answer you just provided that it tends to come up, do you anticipate that COLA costs will be included in the executive's FY26 proposed budget, or even the FY25 supplemental budget?
I can't speak to whether or not the executive is planning to do that. I have no knowledge of that at this time.
Okay. Was it, did you all address in FY 2024 COLA increases in a similar fashion as you're addressing them in 2025?
Yes.
And is it reasonable to expect that you will address them the same way in FY 2026?
That's a reasonable expectation.
Okay.
Or I'll say that's a reasonable assumption.
Got it. The department shared with the committee that after some time it's hired a student loan ombudsman. Are you all still due to have that person start in March?
Yes, our new student loan ombudsman will begin in March, and we're very much looking forward to having our new ombudsman on board.
Okay, great. The department's pre-hearing responses highlighted resources that DISB has available to promote awareness of investment fraud. Does the department have resources and or personnel available for district residents who have been victims of identity theft?
So thank you for that question. I would say that the department approaches that in a couple of different ways. So overall, as it relates to our regulatory authority, we provide information to residents around protecting them from financial fraud. We have a number of consumer education and awareness outreach efforts that we conduct that we engage in throughout the year. We have regulatory oversight that includes fraud investigations and enforcement, consumer complaint resolutions, and also proactive fraud prevention. As it relates to identity theft specifically. So if we receive a fraud case that's related to identity theft or has an identity theft component to it, if it's isolated where it's just identity theft, we would then refer it to MPD's financial crimes and cyber unit. We would also recommend to the victim that they issue a credit freeze and contact all 3 of their credit bureaus to make sure that no one takes out any types of loans with their credit or opens up credit cards, et cetera. If we receive a fraud case and identity theft is a part of it along with a scam, then we would take a closer look at it and investigate it. We would also share that information. We would also recommend that they contact the federal bureaus. But because we do look at scams, because we have seen a number of scams in the district, if the scam is related to district residents in particular, and we've seen a number of issues around identity theft and a particular scam, then it is something that we would take a closer look at and also share with the federal authorities as well. Part of the work that we do around consumer education and outreach regarding financial fraud is to better educate residents around ways to prevent identity theft, fraud, et cetera, from happening happening. It's something that has increased significantly over the last couple of years. We've issued a number of consumer alerts. We created a new online scam tracker. I think I mentioned that in my testimony. We're one of 3 states that has a scam tracker where we keep track of these different scams. We update it, and we push information out regularly throughout the year so that consumers are aware of it.
Appreciate the response. I don't have any additional questions at this time. I look forward to getting the follow-up that we discussed on some of the issues that are relevant to today's oversight hearing, particularly the information from some of your sister housing agencies. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we adjourn?
I want to just thank you, Councilmember McDuffie, for the opportunity to talk about, highlight the work of our agency. I'm pleased with the work of our agency. I also want to thank the mayor for the investments that she's made at the department in ensuring that we can fulfill our mission around consumer protection, around supporting district businesses, and also around supporting residents and business owners around their financial journey. I also want to thank the staff of the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking for their work. I want to also thank them for their trust in me. Overall, I just want to say thank you. So thanks.
All right, thank you, and thanks to your team for your testimony this afternoon. I want to thank all the government witnesses and their teams for the participation in today's performance oversight hearing of the committee. And with that, this marks the end of today's performance oversight hearing. The committee's next performance oversight hearing will be on Wednesday, February 12th at 9:30 a.m. to discuss the performance of Destination DC, the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Administration, and the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission. There being no further business before the committee, this marks the end of today's hearing. The time is now 12:45 p.m., and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.